Chapter 1061. Those 3 words were clearly ringing in her ears, but when they entered Yi Yuyu's ears, they seemed to have come from a very, very distant place. They were ethereal and unreal, and Yi Yuyu's mind went blank. Perhaps it was because of this voice, or because of Li Jinnan's completely strange embrace. Yi Yuyu completely forgot how to react for a moment. Li Jinnan clearly noticed Yi Yuyu's stiffness. He held the steering wheel with one hand, looked ahead, and turned to look at Yi Yuyu beside him. There was a very strange feeling in his heart. But soon he gently pushed her away and said, "Seat belt." After being pushed away, Yi Yuyu didn't know when the tears that were still flowing from her eyes had stopped. His face suddenly became boiling hot. Yi Yuyu didn't have to look to know that her face must be frighteningly red. Yi Yuyu didn't even dare to raise her head. She pulled the seat belt next to her, fastened it, and sat in the car obediently. Li Jinnan glanced through the rearview mirror and saw that Shin Luo and couldn't catch up at all, so he slowed down the car. Looking at Yi Yuyu, Li Jinnan took a few tissues and handed them to her. He asked, "Did you quarrel?" Yi Yuyu lowered her head and took it. She shook her head gently and said, "No, I can't quarrel with him." "So now you are running away from home?" Li Jinnan's voice was somewhat ambiguous. Yi Yuyu didn't know if it was an illusion, but Li Jinnan's voice seemed to be a little happy. He said, "If I remember correctly, that person should be your husband, right?" "Yes." "Why did you quarrel?" Yi Yuyu didn't answer, but looked up at Li Jinnan through the rearview mirror. Her eyes were full of curiosity and doubt. Li Jinnan's phoenix eyes looked calm, as if what he just asked was just a casual question. However, Yi Yuyu didn't want to answer, so she lowered her head and didn't speak. For a time, the air was filled with indescribable silence and strangeness. Li Jinnan simply changed the topic and asked, "Where to?" "I'll take you there. You can drop me off on the side of the road." "Thank you, President Li." Yi Yuyu tilted her head and looked out the window. "I still have a lot of things to settle and work to do. I won't trouble you." His voice was distant and polite to the point that it chilled one's heart. Li Jinnan looked down at his wristwatch and said, "It's time for dinner. You haven't had dinner yet, right? Why don't we eat together?" "GM Li, I still have work to do. I'm a little busy, so I won't be joining you for lunch today. Why don't we eat another day?" Yi Yuyu wasn't in the mood. Furthermore, the relationship between her and Li Jinnan was awkward. What happened that night, although no one mentioned it first, was the first thing that happened. However, the loss of her first time that day was like a thorn in her heart, making her feel very uncomfortable. When Li Jinnan heard that, he asked casually, "What job?" "Kingstown TV's variety show is about to start. This show's ratings are pretty good. It wasn't easy for me to get it. I can't be late." "Oh, I see." Li Jinnan raised his eyebrows slightly. It was recorded at this time. As he spoke, he turned the car around and headed in the opposite direction. Yi Yuyu was stunned. Only then did she realize that the meal was just a pretense. He was trying to find out where she worked. Chapter 1062. Yi Yuyu turned her head and looked at Li Jinnan strangely. Then, she didn't speak again. It was rush hour. She might not be able to get a taxi if she went out. She looked at the time. It would probably take a while to get there from here. Forget it, forget it. Yi Yuyu kept turning her head to look out of the window and didn't dare to look back. Seeing that the surrounding buildings were getting more and more familiar, Yi Yuyu turned her head and said when she saw the TV station, "President Li, thank you. We are here. You can drop me off here." "Okay." Li Jinnan responded, but he didn't stop the car. Instead, he drove to the gate of the TV station. Yi Yuyu was shocked and immediately knew what he wanted to do. She shouted, "GM Li, you can just drop me here. If you stop at the entrance of the television station, there will definitely be some gossip." Li Yuyu was shocked. "Do you know how stars become famous?" Li Jinnan didn't care. He glanced at her and chuckled. Yi Yuyu was even more shocked. Does Li Jinnan want to use this to create hype? Of course, some hype is one of the important factors for stars to become famous. But with Li Jinnan? Absolutely not. Yi Yuyu's heart was beating very fast. She shouted, "President Li, I am married. If my husband's family sees any bad news about me, I am afraid." But before she finished speaking, the speed of the Bentley slowly slowed down. Li Jinan stopped the car and said, "Go." It was not far from the TV station, but it was also a blind spot from the gate. Yi Yuyu's words were all choked in her throat. The air was filled with unspeakable awkwardness. It turned out that I was being unrequited? Yi Yuyu blushed, but then she didn't want to stay for long. After unbuckling the seatbelt, she grabbed her bag and ran away. Li Jinan watched her flee in a flustered manner, and the corners of his lips curled up subconsciously. He started the car and turned around to go back. Yi Yuyu looked at the eye-catching Bentley. All the heat on her face didn't ease, but intensified. Damn it! If this happened a few more times, I'm afraid I won't be able to live. Yi Yuyu wasn't a superstar. She wasn't even a B-list or B-list celebrity. As soon as she walked in, the makeup artist, who had already made an appointment with her, snapped when she saw her and shouted, "What the hell are you doing? If it weren't for Mira, I wouldn't be helping a small celebrity like you with makeup. Just when you were thinking how great you were, do you know what time it is? You're a whole 5 minutes late." Hearing that, Yi Yuyu's face turned redder. In the face of such an angry scolding, she wanted to refute, but she quickly lowered her head and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, Ms. Ada. I'm late. There won't be a next time." Ada's anger subsided when she saw Yi Yuyu's attitude. She warned, "Be more careful next time. Go wash your face." "Yes." Yi Yuyu lowered her head and went inside. After washing her face, she came out again. Although they were a few minutes late, the recording was still considered a success. After all, she wasn't an important guest, so even if she was late, no one would notice. In such a program, all Yi Yuyu did was show her face and make her presence known. Chapter 1063. Shen Luoan had called her many times. When she was about to call him back, she heard someone shouting, "Wow, that's so shocking. The woman who committed suicide yesterday is having sex with her brother." Shen Luoan said, "Wow, that's amazing. The woman who committed suicide yesterday is having sex with her brother." Hearing this, Yi Yuyu was shocked. Xiao Chen's originally calm heart was like a small lake that was surging uncontrollably when he heard these words. It was as if the calm lake at the bottom of his heart had surged with great waves. She turned her head suddenly and asked, "Who is the woman you are talking about?" Yi Yuyu's reaction was very big. Seeing her reaction, the two backstage staff looked at each other and said, "Who else can it be? Isn't it the Shen Manting who committed suicide these days? Oh my god. It's an amazing reversal. Didn't they say that she committed suicide because O Ming ran away from the marriage? Now such a thing happened. It's a slap in the face." Such words made Yi Yuyu's heart beat faster, and she asked, "How do you know?" "What the hell? I'm afraid the whole country knows it now." Suddenly it was exposed anonymously on Weibo, and it's a recording. Recording. Yi Yuyu lowered her head and unlocked the phone. Sure enough, when she opened it, she saw the crazy news on Weibo. After she opened it, it was all about Shen Manting, Shen Luoan, and O Ming. Slap in the face? Mysterious man reveals the truth about Shen's daughter's suicide. Amazing reversal. The woman who committed suicide in love had sex with her married brother. The evidence is conclusive. The recording of Shen brother and sister having sex is exposed on the internet. The brother raped the sister? When Yi Yuyu saw the series of messages, she felt as if she were in a dream. She had just heard such news in the afternoon, and less than 3 hours later, the internet had been turned upside down. Yi Yuyu just opened a news, and before she read it carefully, she received a call from Shen Luoan. Seeing this call, Yi Yuyu had mixed feelings. After picking up the phone, before Yi Yuyu had time to speak, she heard Shen Luoan's angry voice coming from the other side. "Yi Yuyu." Yi Yuyu was shocked by his angry roar, and only heard him continue to say, "You are very good, very good. Are you satisfied now? Now not only Shen Manting, but also I will be finished." Yi Yuyu was stunned and asked, "Brother Luon?" Before Yi Yuyu could finish her sentence, Shen Luon continued, "Come back. I want to have a good talk with you." Before Yi Yuyu could make a sound, he had hung up the phone. Yi Yuyu began to panic. His heart felt terribly empty. This matter was not simple. Shen Luoan had never been so angry before, and it was directed at her. Could it be that Shen Luoan thought that she was the culprit? At that thought, Yi Yuyu's heart skipped a beat. She quickly picked up her phone and wanted to call Shen Luo N, but the line was busy. Without further ado, she picked up her handbag and ran out. He took a taxi and headed home. Yi Yuyu scrolled through Weibo and saw a new Weibo post from an empty account. The title was eye-catching: The Truth Behind the Shen Family's Precious Daughter's Suicide. It turned out that it was caused by her brother forcing himself on her. Chapter 1064. Yi Yuyu clicked on the recording and heard Shen Luo An's voice. The content was exactly the same as the conversation she had overheard at the door in the afternoon. There was no difference in the voice or the content. The only difference was the size and clarity. Some parts of the conversation that Yi Yuyu hadn't heard very clearly were played clearly in the recording. Without a doubt, it must have been recorded from a very close distance. But it wasn't her. Could it be Shen Manting? But what good would it do for Shen Manting to release the recording and its content at such a time? Nothing. Nothing at all. Yi Yuyu couldn't find a reason for Shen Manting to release the recording, but if it was Yi Yuyu, it would make sense. A person would frame another person for no other reason than jealousy or hatred. So, Shen Luo An insisted that she was the one who played the recording, didn't he? Yi Yuyu's heart sank to the bottom. When Yu Lily released the recording, she was also hesitant. If such content was released, the consequences could be big or small. But for her, it was undoubtedly good. But wouldn't it hurt Yi Yuyu? After all, Shen Luo An was her husband. Therefore, before Yu Lily released the recording, she called Yi Qianqian to ask. After a moment of silence, Yi Qianqian said, "If it's really like what you said, there's no point in forcing Yi Yuyu to be with Shen Luo An." With that, Yu Lily knew what to do. She registered an account and located the IP address to Canada. Then, she began to release the recording. Sure enough, when the recording was released, it caused a sensation on the internet. She picked up her cell phone and dialed Oh Ming's number. Oh Ming seemed to be busy at the moment. It rang for a long time before he picked up the phone. He sounded a little tired. "Oh Ming, I just did something big." Yu Lily's voice was mysterious. Oh Ming was silent for a moment before he asked, "That recording, did you release it?" "Yes." Yu Lily lay on the bed with a smile on her face. "In this way, Shen Manting can't marry you, right? How did you get it?" "I installed a monitoring virus in her phone. When they were talking, I happened to hear them, so I recorded those words." When Oh Ming heard that, he wasn't as happy as Yu Lily had imagined. Instead, his expression became solemn. Yu Lily didn't hear Oh Ming speak, so she was a little confused and called out, "Oh Ming, are you listening?" "Yes." There was no joy in Oh Ming's voice. Instead, he sighed and said, "It's really you. Next time you do something like this, remember to tell me first. This time, you were too impulsive." Shen Manting was right. Without Shen Manting, there would still be Zhang Manting and Li Manting tomorrow. Oh Ming's wife could be many Mantings, but she couldn't be Yu Lily. Yu Lily didn't understand what he meant and asked, "What's wrong?" "Things are not as simple as you think. Stay in Paris for the time being and don't come back. I'll pick you up after I've dealt with things here." Oh Ming's voice carried a hint of coaxing, as if he was coaxing a child. Chapter 1065. Yu Lily's voice was like a layer of sweet and sticky honey, covering Oh Ming's heart, making him feel indescribably satisfied. Unconsciously, Oh Ming curled his lips and responded softly. He said slowly, "I miss you too. It won't be long. When I'm done here, I'll officially bring you back." At that time, he would officially give her an identity. But now was not the time. Yu Lily understood Oh Ming's dilemma, nodded and asked, "Are you busy?" "Well, a little bit." "Then you go ahead, I'll call you later." "Okay, go to bed early. Good night." "Good night." After saying goodbye, Oh Ming felt warm in his heart. But when he turned his head, he saw Qiao Ziqing at a glance. Qiao Ziqing didn't know how long she had been standing behind him, looking at Oh Ming with disappointment in her eyes. Oh Ming felt bad in his heart. When he was about to speak, he heard Qiao Ziqing say, "Oh, what kind of woman are you looking for? Not only is she not educated, but she also has no brains? The Shen family has been friends with our family for many years. Now the Shen family has become like this, and it can't be separated from your mistress. Oh, what do you want me to say about you?" Mom, it's not what you think, in fact. I heard it all and you still want to lie to me. Xiao Ziqing shouted and looked disappointed. She stared at her son and roared, I won't allow you to be with such a woman. Such a woman has tarnished the threshold of our family. Break up with me immediately, and don't contact her in the future. Xiao Ziqing's words were full of anger. When Ming heard that, his face, which was originally quite good, suddenly darkened. Looking at his mother's serious and angry expression, he said, Mom, Lily is not the kind of person you think she is. She is an orphan, but she is much better than Shen Manting, a two-faced, selfish woman. Shut up. Xiao Ziqing was even more furious and roared, I think you are bewitched by that woman. What kind of magic potion did she give you? That kind of woman, for the sake of money, she would do anything in front of you. Do you think I don't know? Ming was also angry and said in a low voice, Mom, she's not that kind of person. If she did it for money, she wouldn't have broken up with me in the first place. If she was that kind of woman, do you think she would still be with Shen Manting? Xiao Ziqing's breathing became more rapid, her chest heaving up and down as she shouted, Crazy, you're really crazy. Ming, I thought that when you grew up, your thinking would be more mature. How could you still be so naive? These are all tricks. That kind of woman is best at playing these kinds of tricks. Do you think I don't know? Do you think I haven't met her before? When your father was young, it was common for him to meet this kind of woman. If it wasn't for my high vigilance, do you think there would be a place for us in this house? Mom, she's different from the other women you've met. She's not the kind of woman you're talking about. I'm in my 30s, so I can still differentiate. You don't have to worry about me. I hope I can make my own decisions about my marriage. Ming's voice was tinged with anger, but his tone was extremely calm and determined. Chapter 1066. Ming turned pale with fright and rushed forward to support Xiao Ziqing. Xiao Ziqing covered her waist with one hand and held Ming tightly with the other. She shouted, Ming, listen to me. Break up with that woman, okay? I'm begging you as your mother, okay? As he spoke, he choked with sobs and cried out in pain. You're bewitched by that woman now, but in the future, you'll feel that what I did was right. That kind of woman has no redeeming qualities at all. Don't talk. Ming looked flustered. He quickly helped Xiao Ziqing up and said, I'll take you back to take your medicine. Don't talk and don't move. Xiao Ziqing's hands clutched Ming's sleeves tightly. Her well-maintained figure seemed a little crooked at this moment. She shouted, Promise me first that you will break up with that woman. Don't talk. Ming was angry with her. He simply picked her up and asked, Where did you put the medicine? I don't want to take medicine. You're my only son, and even my only son doesn't listen to me. Before she could finish her sentence, Xiao Ziqing groaned in pain and said, I might as well. Just die. Ming was so angry that he almost cursed. He strode into her room and gently placed her on the bed. He turned around and searched the room. He asked, Where did you put the medicine? I don't know. Xiao Ziqing was in so much pain that her body was convulsing, but her voice was still full of energy. She shouted, If you don't listen to me, I'll die in front of you. Ming pursed his lips and stopped flipping through the book. He stood up and walked out. Xiao Ziqing saw this and was even more confused. Then tears fell down and she shouted, You damn heartless man. Do you really want your mother to die rather than break up with that woman? Why did I give birth to you? Her voice became softer and softer. Xiao Ziqing hugged her body and curled up. She softly moaned in pain and whispered, Where did Lao go? I'm going to die. Your son wants me to die. However, before Xiao Ziqing could finish her sentence, the sound of hurried footsteps could be heard from outside. Ming held a white bottle of medicine in his hand. After opening the package, he fed it to Xiao Ziqing. Xiao Ziqing ate it in a daze and fell asleep on the bed. It was obviously a cold day, but Ming was so scared that he was sweating. He touched his face and checked her breathing. When he found that she was getting calmer, he breathed a sigh of relief. After letting his mother lie down and tucking her in, he straightened up and looked at Xiao Ziqing helplessly. The young ones were hard to deal with, and the old ones were also hard to deal with. Why were all the women around him so restless? Ming sighed. He turned around and went back to his room to hide the spare medicine. She actually used her illness to threaten me to break up with you, Lily. It seems that I have to speed up the implementation of my plan. You, Lily, was always paying attention to the developments on Weibo. In just 4 hours, the first Weibo post had more than 100,000 likes and tens of thousands of comments. However, just as she was engrossed in reading the comments, the internet speed jumped, and the page changed to 404. Chapter 1067. She was the one who posted it. She hadn't deleted it, so it had to be deleted by the authorities. But, isn't it too late to delete the post now? You, Lily, clicked on the top search on Weibo and looked around. Almost all of it had been deleted. Tisk, it's a blatant lie. But, you, Lily, wasn't stupid enough to log into that account at this time. That account had probably been targeted long ago. If she logged in, the moment she logged in, she could be targeted by hackers. With you, Lily's current skills, she wasn't 100% sure that she wouldn't be tracked. She searched for the account name, and sure enough, it had been 404. Haha. But, immediately, you, Lily, felt that something was wrong. All the major marketing accounts began to publish new content about a certain celebrity taking drugs. In a flash, the celebrity's name was all over the screen. In a flash, it was pushed to the top search. The change was so fast that you, Lily, was caught off guard. Changing the topic? Changing the target? The topic came too fast. Without a doubt, it must be Shen Luoan's doing. You, Lily, looked around and found that the incident between Shen Luoan and Shen Manting had been completely replaced. Now, most people's attention had been shifted to the celebrity taking drugs. That's something. But those who should have seen it must have seen it, and those who should have heard it must have heard it all. Moreover, you, Lily, had a backup. It would come in handy sooner or later. Yi Yuyu had a small apartment in Kingstown. Usually, she lived alone. This time, because Shen Manting was holding her wedding in Kingstown, it was temporarily used as a temporary residence for her family. For example, Shen Luoan, Shen Manting, and the servant Nanny Zhang. At this time, Nanny Zhang should be taking care of Shen Manting in the hospital. So, only Shen Luoan was there. If it had been any other time, Yi Yuyu would have been very happy to hear the news. But today, there was an indescribable sense of heaviness. When Yi Yuyu returned home, it was already past 10 p.m. Very late. With an uneasy heart, Yi Yuyu took out the key and opened the door. The living room was very dark without the light on. Yi Yuyu's eyes had good night vision. Even in a very dark place, she could see clearly. Just as he was about to reach for the lamp, a figure suddenly stood up from the sofa in front of him. Yi Yuyu was shocked and took a step back. At the same time, she pressed the button on the light and shouted, "Who is it?" The lights came on. With a glance, Yi Yuyu saw the figure inside. It was a man wearing a bright green sweater. His body was tall and straight, but his face was very gloomy. Shen Luoan walked toward Yi Yuyu. Step by step, his footsteps were steady and slow. When she saw that it was Shen Luoan, she didn't feel relieved. Instead, she felt an indescribable sense of heaviness and nervousness. "Luo! Brother Luoan!" Yi Yuyu shouted and looked at him. "Why don't you turn on the light?" However, Shen Luoan didn't answer her. Instead, he approached her with a sullen face and said, "Hand over the recording." When Yi Yuyu heard that, she immediately said, "I didn't." "Do you dare to say that you weren't eavesdropping on our conversation outside this afternoon?" Shen Luoan sneered and approached her. "Yi Yuyu, do you think I'm a fool?" Chapter 1068. Yi Yuyu looked at Shen Luoan's obviously unkind face and stepped back. However, Shen Luoan's face showed obvious disbelief. He looked at Yi Yuyu coldly, approached her step by step, and said, "At that time, there was only me and Shen Manting. Who else but you?" When Yi Yuyu heard this, she felt suffocated. She looked at Shen Luoan and shook her head repeatedly. "Why don't you believe me?" "I didn't. I didn't have to do this at all, did I? We have known each other for almost 20 years. Shen Luoan, am I such a person in your eyes?" "No." However, in addition to him and Shen Manting, there was only Yi Yuyu. No matter what, Shen Manting couldn't joke about such a thing, so it could only be Yi Yuyu. How could it not be her? Shen Luoan stared at Yi Yuyu and sneered, "I don't understand what you are thinking. Yi Yuyu, You have been wrong during the time you married me, haven't you? There was sarcasm in Shin Luoan's words, and a pair of serious eyes stared at Yi Yuyu in front of him. When Yi Yuyu saw Shin Luoan's expression, she knew that this man was angry. Her back hit the cold wall behind her. Yi Yuyu looked at Shen Luoan, who was walking in front of her step by step, and frowned tightly. That's why you released this recording in an attempt to destroy me, am I right? Shin Luoan's face became more and more ugly, and his tone was also more and more determined. You are a smart person. You know very well what the consequences will be after this recording is released. At that time, Shen Manting doesn't need you to do anything at all. Grandma will drive her out personally. That's amazing. It wasn't me. Yi Yuyu's face was pale and she shouted, Shin Luoan, that's enough. It wasn't me, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. I didn't even turn on the recording software on my mobile phone, and how could I know what you would say? If I released this recording in Shen Manting's current situation, would I still be a human? She is also my good friend and your sister. How could I do such a thing? If Yi Yuyu was now on the opposing side of Shin Luoan and Shin Manting, she would have released the recording knowing that it was enough to destroy Shin Luoan and Shin Manting. That would have been Shen Manting's own doing. Who asked Yi Yuyu to be caught red-handed? That wasn't the case at all. Yi Yuyu had a pretty good relationship with Shen Manting. Although she had accidentally heard such a secret that day, and she had even considered divorcing Shen Manting, she had no intention of harming Shen Manting. Now that Shen Luoan had interrogated her in such a manner, Yi Yuyu's heart turned cold. She had loved this man for more than 10 years. If he had ever loved her, he would never have said such words to her. Being able to be so aggressive only proved that this man did not love her at all. When he heard Yi Yuyu's explanation, he sneered, Are you sure? Yi Yuyu, did you think I didn't know? When your parents divorced, you fought with your sister to follow your mother. Wasn't it because your mother's mistress was rich? Fortunately, your sister gave in. Otherwise, do you think you would still be the daughter of a rich family today? Poor sister. She didn't even know that she had been sold by you. Chapter 1069. Seeing Yi Yuyu's reaction, Shin Luoan looked at her coldly and said, Do you want to know how I know it? I didn't. Yi Yuyu shouted, Who doesn't want to be with their mother? I wanted to be with my mother, and so did my sister, but I was only 5 years old at that time. How could I know so many twists and turns? Shin Luoan, don't judge others by your own standards. I'm not as disgusting as you. Shin Luoan sneered, You've been disgusting for so many years. Don't you think it's too hypocritical to say this now? You know how to make yourself more beautiful and likable since you were a child. Grandma was right. A woman like you is full of bad intentions since you were a child. You are destined to have no fate with our Shin family. No wonder my grandma hates you so much. Hearing this, Yi Yuyu's heart beat faster, and her heart was cold. She looked at Shin Luoan in front of her and said, Do you want a divorce? Divorce? Shin Luoan laughed. I'm crazy. If I divorce at this time, I'm really finished. While speaking, he stopped. Shin Luoan was not as tall as Li Jinnan. He was about 1.8 meters tall, which was almost the same height as Yi Yuyu, who was wearing high heels. They looked at each other, and Shen Luoan continued, Or do you want me to lose my reputation? To get back at me? Yi Yuyu was shocked. Looking at him, she didn't know what to say for a moment. Is this what Shen Luoan thinks of me? How is it possible, Shen Luoan? I'll get back at anyone but you. Don't say it, Shen Luoan interrupted her and said. In this case, you'd better not intervene in the next thing. If I find out, I don't know what I'll do. After that, Shen Luoan directly bypassed her, opened the door and went straight out. The door was slammed shut. Yi Yuyu was frozen in place and couldn't recover for a long time. In her heart, the things that she had been obsessed with seemed to collapse at this moment. Heavily, she made a clear and desperate sound. He didn't believe her, even if only a little. Is this still the old Shen Luoan? The boy who used to look at her with a gentle smile, the boy who once ran in the mountains with a high fever on his back, and the boy who was almost eaten by wolves in order to save her from the mountains, where was he? There was nothing left. With the passage of time, the youth in the past had gradually disappeared without a trace. Was this man and Shen Luoan still worthy of her persistent love? That was the first time Yi Yuyu had thought about it. He was at a loss and at a loss. Her cell phone rang anxiously. Yi Yuyu took it out of her bag and answered it. It was Mila. Mira was not only her good friend but also the best agent under NC Company. She picked up the phone and heard Myra's anxious voice. She shouted, Yuyu, the fact that you're married has been exposed. Now everyone knows that you're Shin Luo An's wife. You'd better not go out for the next few days if there's nothing important. I'm afraid you'll be surrounded by the paparazzi. How could that be? Very few people know about this. I don't know. Anyway, be careful. I'll ask an assistant to help you. Got it. Thank you, Mila. Chapter 1070. Mira, Yi Yuyu interrupted Myra's words and said, If I use this to hype up, will it have any impact? Mira was stunned. She thought it would take a lot of effort to persuade her to use this to hype up. She didn't expect Yi Yuyu to ask first. After thinking for a while, Mira said, If you decide to use this to hype up, leave it to me. If it were any other artist, I would definitely start to hype up without hesitation. But you are my friend, and I don't want you to blame me in the future. Yuyu, if you really want to use this to hype up, I am confident that I can make you famous. As for whether you can make it to the A-list or not, it depends on how hard you work. Like many girls, Yi Yuyu had dreamed of being a big star since she was a child. Hearing Myra's words, it was impossible for Yi Yuyu to say that she wasn't tempted. Everyone wanted to be successful and reach the peak of life. People who had this kind of goal were always men and women, young and old. Yi Yuyu was silent for a moment and asked, What is the risk? Now that the crisis has been created, even if the outside world knows the fact that you have a secret marriage with a young master of the Shin family, it is not impossible to cover up this matter. But, if you want to make use of this matter, you have to make it big. So, will it bring harm to the Shen family? The harm to the Shen family is not caused by you, but by themselves. What you do is just to help them. But, if it succeeds, will your husband blame you? Blame? Yi Yuyu twitched her lips and said, Then let's start, Mira. I'm ready. Mira felt a little strange and reminded her, If there is a crack in your marriage because of this, will it be okay? Even if I don't hype up, there will still be cracks in our marriage. Yi Yuyu smiled and looked into the mirror from afar. Suddenly, she felt a little sad. I'll leave it to you, Mira. Tell me what to do. All right, I'll contact you again if I need your cooperation. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Yi Yuyu sat on the sofa and browsed the news. The major websites had been replaced with news of a famous male star taking drugs, but there were also netizens who questioned and posted, Is this to save the Shin siblings? Hands up. This PR is awesome. After scrolling a bit more, she realized that there were already a lot of news about her on the trending page. Breaking news. Shin Luo An's wife's identity has been revealed. She's from the entertainment industry. She's the new and powerful actress, Yi Yuyu. Yi Yuyu clicked on it. Was the newly minted actress referring to her? Although it wasn't positive news, he still felt a little happy when he saw these words. He clicked on it and found that the comments were mixed. Pingxing Idali. What do you mean by a new and powerful actress? Come on, any random unknown actress is a new and powerful actress. How can you call me Goddess Jean? My Goddess Jean Fan Jean Fan double-clicking 666 send you to the heavens. I have an impression of this woman. She's already married? He had a child's face. Damn. Bayan. Shin Shuang is so shameless. I'll send you to heaven. I pity this star. It wasn't easy for her to find a rich second-generation heir. So this is how he behaves, dog head. Super cute little piggy. My sister, you're amazing. You're being treated as a mistress by your own sister-in-law. This woman must be lacking in charm. After scrolling through the list, her phone vibrated. She had received a WeChat message. Chapter 1071. When Yi Yuyu saw the message, she immediately asked, What should I send? Mira, it can highlight your position as the underdog and make you seem helpless, but it can't be weak. It can't make people think that you're pretending to be weak. Think about it carefully. When she saw the message, Yi Yuyu thought for a moment. Then she typed 3 words to Mira. I believe him. When Mira saw the words, she was slightly stunned. She immediately sent a thumbs up. Sure. When Yi Yuyu saw Myra's reply, She sat on the sofa and took a selfie. Then, she sent out the message she had prepared. After she sent it, no one responded for a few minutes. After all, she was a minor celebrity. It was normal for no one to notice her. Yi Yuyu didn't care too much. She put her phone down and went to take a shower. After removing her makeup and applying a facial mask, she picked up her phone and realized that the message had exploded. Sister Fan Fan is the best. F***CK. He still believes in such conclusive evidence. True love. Yunxia Iji Ruhua. Girl, although I don't know you, I sympathize with you. It's better to get a divorce with such a man. Heart. Bao Jia's little lowly. I've seen the military adventure you acted in. Although you're not very popular yet, I can tell that you're a very hard-working newcomer. Keep it up. Heart. Shuang Shen Kuangdia. You still believe in him? Are you retarded? Because of this message, Yi Yuyu's number of fans increased from the original tens of thousands. There were a lot of messages popping up. It was the first time that Yi Yuyu had experienced such an obvious change in her fans. Do you know how celebrities become famous? It's 30% ability, 30% luck, and the rest is all hype. That was what Mira had said. Make use of the hype. When Yu Lily arrived at the Kingstown airport, it was December 29th, the day before New Year's Eve. Yu Lily had wrapped herself up tightly to avoid being photographed. Her original plan of not returning to the country had been completely ruined by Oh Ming. The first thing Yu Lily did when she returned to the country was to put her luggage at home before calling Oh Ming. Recently, Oh Ming had been extremely busy. The end of the year was approaching, and there were a lot of urgent matters to deal with in the company. There was also his mother's matter, the Shen family's matter, and the wedding. All kinds of things piled up. When he received Yu Lily's call, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he had just eaten. Oh Ming? Yu Lily asked. Oh Ming took a sip of the soup and replied, Yes. I'm back home. Oh Ming choked on his soup and coughed violently. He hurriedly pulled out a piece of tissue and wiped it. At this time? Yeah. Yu Lily heard his surprise and said, I'm alone at home now. Yi Qianqian went home for the new year. No one followed you, right? Oh Ming put down his chopsticks worriedly. Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? I was afraid that you wouldn't let me come back. I missed you. Yu Lily's voice was cautious. After I got off the plane, I wrapped myself up tightly. No one would recognize me. I'll be fine. Oh Ming's temper melted when he heard her say, I missed you. His expression softened as he said in a low voice, Wait for me. I'll go look for you now. Chapter 1072. Su Cheng was sitting next to Oh Ming eating. After watching Oh Ming hang up the phone, he coughed and asked, Is that Miss Yu? Yeah. Oh Ming answered and stood up. After explaining the company's affairs, he stood up and said, If anyone looks for me, tell them that I am busy and have been in the company. In this kind of situation, Oh Ming did not dare to provoke the reporters easily. If they were groundless, who knew what they would write? Su Cheng knew the danger and nodded, but he still reminded him, Why don't you eat first? I'm not eating. You eat. Oh Ming went into the office cloakroom and put on sunglasses. After changing into a low-key black windbreaker, he went downstairs. Driving a more common car, he stealthily drove to the neighborhood where Yu Lily lived. As soon as he went up, Oh Ming rang the doorbell, and the person inside immediately opened the door. Oh Ming was dressed very differently from his usual style, but Yu Lily recognized him at a glance. With a happy smile on her face, she rushed toward him. Her whole body climbed on top of him, and her legs clung to his thighs. Oh Ming held her firmly, and the smile on his face gradually widened. After carrying her in, he closed the door and couldn't wait to kiss her face. Yu Lily took off his sunglasses, hugged his neck with both hands, and kissed him back. Oh Ming sat on the sofa with her in his arms, pinched her face and frowned. Why have you lost weight again? Haven't you eaten these days? I'm not used to French food. Yu Lily smiled and sat on him, looking at his tired face. On his originally wheat-colored skin, there were 2 more dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that even his chin had turned green. His hair had grown long, and his cheeks were slightly sunken. Yu Lily felt a little distressed. She touched his face and asked, Have you been very tired recently? The heartache in her eyes made Ming smile. He held her face and kissed her on the lips. "I'm not tired," he said. "Liar. Look at your face." Lily pinched his face and said, "You look like a person in his 30s. You look old again." Ming laughed. "I'm already in my 30s. No, you look about the same age as Shen Jielia. That's because he grew too fast." Ming looked at her seriously. "That's why he looks old. I'm different. No matter what, I'm still young. Otherwise, how could I have charmed you for so many years?" Yuli snorted in disgust and looked away. "What kind of expression is that?" Ming hugged her and chuckled helplessly. "Am I wrong? You've grown thicker. It's only been a few days since we last met, and your facial defense has become so strong?" Lily pushed him away. "I'm hungry. Have you eaten?" "I didn't eat." "That's great. Let's eat instant noodles together. There's only instant noodles here." "Okay." Ming chuckled and looked at her. "Everything you cook is delicious." Lily raised her eyebrows slightly with a proud look on her face and immediately went into the kitchen. About 10 minutes later, Lily walked out with a bowl of noodles and shouted, "Time to eat." However, what responded to her was a steady and even breathing. Asleep. Chapter 1073. A part of Lily's heart was suddenly squeezed hard, and it was sore and painful. Putting the noodles down, Lily went to the room and took out a blanket. She gently covered him. Ming had always been a light sleeper. Lily's movements were very, very light, for fear of waking him up. After gently covering him with the blanket, Lily quietly took the instant noodles back to the kitchen. Then she put on her coat, hat, and scarf, and walked out the door. Ming hadn't had a good rest since he went to Japan. As soon as he returned to China, he was busy again. Even he didn't expect that he would accidentally fall asleep. When he woke up, he smelled the aroma of food. Ming lifted the blanket on his body and stretched. He could clearly hear a slight sound coming from the kitchen. The sound was very quiet, and he could tell that it was light movements. Ming walked into the kitchen quietly. Lily was cooking. She was wearing an apron and holding a spatula in her hand. From behind, she had short hair and wore a beige scarf. Her figure was slender and graceful. Every part of her was so perfect that it made Ming's heart beat faster. Ming gently stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. Lily was caught off guard and was shocked. When she turned around, she saw Ming's smiling peach blossom eyes. His dark brown eyes were a little bit evil. He leaned over slightly, and his eyes were full of tenderness. He whispered, "Are you scared?" Lily relaxed and glared at him. "Why don't you make a sound when you walk?" Ming hugged her tighter and moved slightly closer. He stared at her face and whispered, "What delicious food are you making?" "See for yourself." "I can't see it." Ming's eyes never moved away. He looked at her and said, "When you are here, I only have eyes for you." Lily couldn't help but smile. She turned off the fire and said, "Go wash your hands. We can eat soon." Ming didn't listen. He leaned forward and easily captured her lips and gently sucked. Lily slightly narrowed her eyes in response, but she withdrew after a kiss and said, "Let's eat first." Ming reluctantly released her and kissed the corner of her lips again. "Okay." He washed his hands and sat down at the dining table. He took the rice that Lily handed him and quickly started eating. Lily had a small stomach, so she was half full after a few bites. She rested her chin on her hands and looked at Ming. Ming couldn't help but chuckle as he ate. He looked up at her and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Are you so fascinated by my handsomeness that you can't help yourself?" "Yeah." Lily laughed out loud, but the smile on her face quickly disappeared. She asked, "It's almost the new year. Aren't you done with your work? They should be on vacation at this time." "There's still a project in the company, and I'm almost done with it." Ming looked up and saw the distress on her face. He felt warm in his heart and said, "Thanks to your help, Shen Manting was dealt with directly. Otherwise, I would have been busy for a while." Lily blinked in surprise. "Really?" "Yeah." These few days, because of Shen Luo An and Shen Manting's matter, the focus of the media has been shifted a lot. It's more convenient to do a lot of things. It's all thanks to you. It was just that the timing of the news wasn't right. Although the travel and reputation issue had been resolved, there was a new problem with Qiao Ziqing. Chapter 1074. Silly girl. O Ming laughed and said, "You did a good job." Hearing O Ming's praise again, Yu Lily felt a little flattered. She folded her hands on the table, looked at O Ming with a pair of round eyes, and asked with a smile, "Then how will you reward me?" "What reward do you want?" The smile on Yu Lily's face widened and she said, "Can you promise me anything?" O Ming saw the cunning smile on her face, and the smile between his eyebrows deepened. He nodded and said, "As long as I can do it, I promise you." As long as he could do it, he could give her anything. Even if he couldn't do it, he would try to do it. Yu Lily heard that and smiled like a flower. "Well, you keep it in mind. When I think of something I will tell you." "Not now." "Not now. Let's talk about it later." Yu Lily stood up, walked to the refrigerator, and asked, "Do you want to drink milk?" Hearing the word milk, O Ming turned his head and said with a smile, "Are you going to drug me again?" Yu Lily felt a little guilty and turned her head away. She coughed and said, "Don't mention the past again." "It happened a few days ago," O Ming said. "Really? Why do I feel that it's been a long time?" Yu Lily took out 2 bottles of milk, put one of them in front of O Ming, and said, "Drink it. There is no drug this time. Feed me." O Ming put down the chopsticks, took out a tissue and wiped his mouth. "You feed me, and I will forgive you for drugging me last time." "If I don't feed you, you won't forgive me?" Yu Lily didn't believe him. She bit the straw in her mouth and looked at him with a teasing look. "Forget it. It doesn't matter to me." O Ming looked at her proud look, stood up, walked toward her and said, "Then I will punish you." Yu Lily held the milk bottle, drank it, and stepped back. She looked at him and asked with a smile, "What do you want to do?" "Don't run. Stand." O Ming walked toward her and rushed toward her with his long arms and legs. "You have to pay the price for bullying men." When Yu Lily saw the situation, she retreated with the milk bottle in her hand and shouted, "I didn't. You've always been the one bullying me." "You're still quibbling? Don't run." O Ming ran after her. Yu Lily exclaimed when she saw that. She ran into the room and locked the door from the inside. With a sigh of relief, Yu Lily put down the milk bottle and shouted, "Mr. Big O, please wait outside." "Open the door, little Yu. You will be punished even more severely." O Ming's voice was filled with laughter. He gently knocked on the door a few times. "Open the door. You still want to punish me? I'm not going out." Yu Lily snorted and walked around the room. She put back the things that she had put away one by one. "Yu Lily, open the door." O Ming was still knocking on the door. After Yu Lily put away her digital screen, she went out and opened the door. As soon as she opened the door, she saw O Ming's tired face. However, his pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes were still as bright as a bright lamp. They were bright and full of expression, like honey, which made people unable to extricate themselves from them. When Yu Lily saw him, all the dissatisfaction that had been accumulated in her heart disappeared. Chapter 1075. Yu Lily was caught off guard. She struggled for a while, but soon she obeyed. O Ming held her in his arms and moved his feet gently. Soon, he pushed her down on the bed that she had just made. The hot kiss gently moved from her lips, and O Ming seemed a little impatient. With his arms around her waist, O Ming looked at her with a pair of burning eyes and whispered, "How long have we not seen each other?" 4 days. Yu Lily gently put her hands on his waist and felt his eagerness and enthusiasm. She looked up at him with a smile. "It's 5 days." O Ming gently kissed her lips. "It's 7 hours faster in China than in Paris, so it's 5 days. Can it be calculated like this?" Yu Lily felt that this man was shameless. Looking at the eyes in front of her, she blinked. O Ming moved a little closer, and his hot breath intertwined with hers. He whispered, "Then let's change the calculation. There are 24 hours in a day, 8 hours of work and 8 hours of sleep. We can be together for 8 hours a day. So, how many hours have I lost?" "That works. Why not?" O Ming smiled. The distance between their lips was less than a millimeter, and they were almost touching. Yu Lily's heart was beating fast. This kind of distance was more nerve-wracking than a direct kiss. Once an hour. Tell me, how many times do you want to compensate me? Lily's face was burning. She pushed him and growled, "Big pervert. If you love someone, you will do sexual things with her all the time. You told me this. Have you forgotten?" "I didn't." "Don't be shameless. You said it." Ming held her hands and then lowered his head to kiss her lips. His movements were gentle, slow, and tender. His big palms moved gently down her body, easily penetrated her clothes around her waist, and touched her warm and smooth skin. Lily narrowed her eyes and gently hugged him. She responded intentionally or unintentionally. The winter in Kingstown was never particularly cold. Lily was wearing an unlined shirt and a loose sweater, which was easily taken off by Ming. Her snow-white upper body touched the cold air and shrank. Ming pressed his lips against hers, and his kisses fell on her body, gentle and devout. Lily couldn't help but lift his thigh. She climbed onto his leg and hugged his waist. She called out, "Ming." Ming directly sealed her lips. His big hands were unscrupulous, and his tongue pried open her lips and teeth, intertwining with each other. Just then, the phone in Ming's pocket began to vibrate. Ming paused and straightened up. His breathing was a little heavy. He picked up the phone and saw that it was his mother calling. He calmed down and waved the phone screen in front of Lily. "It's my mom. I'll take the call." "Yeah," Lily answered. She pulled the sweater that she had thrown aside and covered herself with it. "Mom." "Lil, oh, it's almost Lunar New Year. Come home quickly and let's have a meal together." "Mom, I'm still working. You and Dad can eat first." "You're still working? Where are you working?" "I'm at the company. Don't wait for me." Chapter 1076. When Ming heard that, his heart skipped a beat. Subconsciously, Ming glanced at Lily. Meeting her gaze, Ming remained calm and said, "I just came out. I'll go back later. I still have things to do." "Really? Really?" Xiao Ziqing was skeptical and snorted. "You'd better not let me find out that you're still with that woman. Otherwise, don't come back for the new year. Just die with that woman outside." Su Cheng's heart twitched when he heard that. What she said was too much. You shouldn't casually curse people at any time, especially during the new year. In ancient times, it was considered a taboo for an elder to curse the younger generation. Su Cheng coughed and said, "Madam, isn't it too much to say that? After all, Master O is your son." Xiao Ziqing listened to the phone and looked at Su Cheng. She had already guessed something. With a sullen face she said, "Do you know that he's with that woman?" "I don't know." Su Cheng lowered his head. "But I think it's not appropriate for you to curse your own son like that. Master O has been very busy recently. I hope you can forgive him." Xiao Ziqing knew that her son was busy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have brought him the desserts she had made herself. But as soon as he arrived at the company, he wasn't there. It was a very uncomfortable feeling. Especially when she thought that her son might be with that coquettish B*TCH, she felt even more uncomfortable. Xiao Ziqing held the phone in her hand and said to Ming on the other end of the line, "No matter what, go home early tonight. Special Assistant Su has a family. How can you let him work overtime with you? No matter how important your work is, put it aside and let Special Assistant Su go home for the new year." Ming heard what Xiao Ziqing said and said, "Okay. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." Xiao Ziqing snorted and hung up the phone first, not giving Ming a chance to do so. After hanging up the phone, Xiao Ziqing looked at the young assistant beside her and said, "I know you have a good relationship with my son, but I am Ming's mother. I have the right to know what he has done. Special Assistant Su, next time you find out that he has gone to look for that woman, or if you have any news about that woman, I hope you can tell me. I will not mistreat you." Hearing this, Su Cheng smiled slightly, nodded and said, "Yes, madam, I will definitely tell you everything I know." Xiao Ziqing was satisfied. She looked at the dessert in her hand and said, "Drink this dessert. It's good for your body." As he spoke, he placed the dessert cup on the table and turned to leave. Su Cheng looked at Xiao Ziqing's departing figure with a complicated look in his eyes. He glanced at the dessert she had just put down and sent a message to Ming. Madam seems to have noticed something and asked me to report to her any news about Miss Yu. Oh Ming saw the message and replied, "What do you say?" Special Assistant Sue. I agreed, but I didn't say anything, and I won't say anything in the future. Seeing Su Cheng's reply, Oh Ming put down the phone again. He turned his head and saw Yu Lily, who was obviously a little disappointed. Yu Lily was lying in bed. When she saw him looking at her, she smiled a little resentfully, which made him feel sorry for her. Chapter 1077. It was a simple question, but it made Oh Ming's heart suddenly sour. Yu Lily's face was full of resentment and confusion, as well as a little embarrassment. He shifted his body slightly so that he was no longer pressing down on her. After taking off his jacket, he lay down beside her and kissed her hair gently. He whispered, "No. Maybe my mother has some misunderstandings about you. She'll understand when I explain it to her." Really? Yu Lily was a little depressed. She looked up at Oh Ming's face and smiled. You should go back. Your mother should be waiting for you at home. I want to be with you. Oh Ming leaned over and pressed her under his body. I'll go back tomorrow. As he spoke, he lowered his head, and his lips were close to her face. Yu Lily slightly turned her head to avoid his kiss. Deep in her eyes, there was a clear sense of loss. She whispered, You'd better go back. I don't want to do it now. Oh Ming's eyes were slightly deep. He held her in his arms and said, Then don't do it. Let's chat. Yu Lily heard that, turned over and faced him. Then she lowered her head and went into his arms. She held his waist with one hand and called, Oh Ming. Yeah. Oh Ming held her in his arms and kissed her head gently. I'm here. Oh Ming, I am very curious about one thing, but I have never dared to ask you. Now I want to ask. Can you answer me? Yu Lily looked up at him. Her dark eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of wet mist. Oh Ming looked at her and clearly noticed her uneasiness. He reached out and gently brushed the hair on her forehead. What's the matter? Winter nights always came faster. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and the light in the room was already dark. In the dim light, Oh Ming's eyes looked particularly bright. A pair of sparkling eyes looked at him. They were filled with pity, love, guilt, and an inexplicable pity. Oh Ming. Yu Lily looked at Oh Ming. Her heart beat faster and faster. It was so fast that it was trembling. It was so fast that her heart was numb. Unconsciously, her grip on his clothes tightened as she asked, Will you really marry me? Oh Ming hadn't expected her to ask such a question. He was startled, but he quickly looked at her firmly and said, Yes. Really? Of course. Oh Ming looked at her. His big hand ran through her short hair. His peach blossom eyes were shining. I won't marry another woman. I promise you, my wife is only you. Only you. Yu Lily felt a lump in her throat and buried herself in his arms. Oh Ming looked down at her and said in a hoarse voice, I will take care of my mother. Since Qiao Ziqing was in poor health, it was impossible for him to go against her. He could only convince her step by step. Now, the biggest obstacle between them was Yu Lily's identity. He hugged her and asked in a low voice, Yu, have you seen your parents? Chapter 1078. Her tone was light, as if it was not a big deal. When she spoke, there was a helpless smile on her face. Stop it. Oh Ming reached out and gently stroked her hair. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Do you have any plans? I'll draw at home. Yu Lily smiled. I have nowhere to go anyway. Except for the 3 years I was with you, I had to work on New Year's Eve every year. Now that I finally don't have to work, of course, I have to wake up naturally and then work. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. Don't work. I'll take you out to play. When? Now. Oh Ming pulled her up. I'll take you to second brother's house. Is there anything fun in their house? Yes, they have 3 children. Yu Lily was speechless. Play with children? Dummy challenge begin. As soon as the sweet voice fell, Li Zhenqian and Li Mosen stopped what they were doing. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Tomorrow was New Year's Eve, and Nanny Rong had already started her annual leave. Su Qianxi was reading in the study. Hearing the sound, she called, Daesu, see who's here. However, there was no response. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell continued to ring. Su Chenxi closed her book and walked out. As soon as she went out, she saw 3 little guys, each in a very strange posture, maintaining a motionless posture. Li Jianyue was holding a big doll, sitting on the sofa, in the most normal posture. As for the other 2, Li Jianqian maintained a running posture, and Li Mosen's mouth was open as if he wanted to say something. His eyes were wide open, not even blinking. Seeing them like this, Su Chenxi knew they were playing some boring game again. Ignoring them, she went straight to the door and opened it. She clicked on the intercom screen and saw Yu Lily and O Ming. Su Chenxi was quite surprised, but quickly opened the door and invited them in. Seeing Su Chenxi, Yu Lily felt a little warm. As soon as she entered, she gave Su Chenxi a big hug. Su Chenxi was dazed and looked at O Ming. With a faint smile on his lips, O Ming asked, "Is second brother here?" "He hasn't come back yet. Come in." Su Chenxi opened the door and gently patted Yu Lily on the back. "What's wrong?" "I'm fine." Yu Lily smiled brightly. "Where's your child?" "Daesu, Ersu, Mosen, stop playing. We have guests." Hearing Su Chenxi's words, Li Jianqian immediately breathed a sigh of relief, and Li Mosen directly relaxed and sat on the ground. "I'm so tired." Li Mosen gasped, but he quickly stood up and said, "Hello, uncle." "Hello, auntie." Li Mosen was of mixed blood, with blue eyes and fair skin. He looked out of place with the other 2 children. However, Li Mosen was also extremely good-looking. He looked like a doll. Yu Lily was excited. She stepped forward, touched Li Mosen's little head and said, "Hello." Li Jianqian called out, "Uncle O, you're here. What would you like to drink?" Li Jianyue also got up from the sofa and greeted, "Hello, Auntie Lily. Hello, Uncle O Ming." Her voice was as sweet as cotton candy, very pleasant to listen to. Chapter 1079. "Sit down, I'll cut fruit for you," Su Chenxi said. Then she looked at Li Jianqian and said, "Daesu, go and get juice for uncle and auntie." "Okay." Li Jianqian responded, but Li Jianyue immediately shouted, "Mom, I'll go." Su Chenxi saw that she was so active, smiled and said, "Okay, then you go." Li Jianyue happily put down the doll in her hand, and then walked to the kitchen with her short legs. The little nightdress on her body flew as she walked. She moved a small stool and climbed to the kitchen where the cups were placed. She took 2 cups and then went to get a tray. After putting down the cups, he carried the small stool to the door of the fridge, tiptoed to open the fridge door, and used all his strength to pull out a bottle of juice. After that, his pair of short hands carried the juice to the side of the table where the cups were placed. After stuffing the juice on the table, she returned the way she came and took the small stool back. After pouring 2 glasses of juice, Li Jianyue took the tray and walked to the sofa in the living room. Along the way, a pair of big black grape-like eyes stared at the 2 glasses of juice on the tray, for fear of spilling it. Finally, after walking for a long time, seeing that the juice was safe and sound, she breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Uncle and Auntie, drink the juice." Yu Lily's heart was about to melt. She picked up the 2 glasses of juice, put one in front of O Ming, and held the other in her hand. "Thank you, Ersu." "Auntie, you're welcome." Li Jianyue smiled happily, holding the tray and dancing. She cheered and walked toward the kitchen shouting, "Mom, Mom, I'm done." Auntie also thanked Ersu. As her short legs moved, the pink princess nightgown on her body also moved along with them. Her bell-like laughter made people's hearts feel comfortable. Yu Lily looked at Li Jianyue running, and the love and envy in her eyes became stronger. She took a sip of juice, and her eyes were deep. Li Jianqian and Li Mosen came out with a Rubik's Cube, ran to O Ming and shouted, "Uncle O, you see, I can turn it now and Mosen can do it too." "That's amazing," O Ming praised, took the Rubik's Cube and said, "Then Uncle will test you." Hearing this, Li Jianqian was a little excited. He nodded and said, "I also asked my father to buy me a very complicated toy. Mosen knows how to play, but I don't. I'll go get it." With that, he ran inside. O Ming chuckled. Looking at the little guy who was excited to show off, he felt that the little guy was very similar to Li Xiqing when he was young. However, as Li Xiqing grew up, he became more introverted and composed. Li Mosen sat obediently at the side, took the Rubik's Cube from O Ming's hand, and quickly turned it in his hand. Yu Lily watched as Li Mosen turned the Rubik's Cube. She couldn't help but exclaim, "I don't even know how to play with this thing. Kids nowadays are too smart." Not all children are so quick-witted. O Ming looked up with a smile on his lips. Second brother's children are all very smart. As he spoke, he looked up at Yu Lily and said, "In the future, our children will be as smart as them." In the future, our children. Yu Lily was still very confused about the future. Chapter 1080. Everything was still unknown. However, she wanted to be with him. She wanted to be with him, to live together, and to have children together. Seeing the softness deep in O Ming's eyes, Yu Lily smiled and nodded. So be it. Cherish the present. Take one step at a time. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of a pink figure. Turning her head, she saw Li Genue's chubby little hands holding a fruit platter. She was being very careful, as if she was afraid of dropping it. Feeling Yu Lily's gaze on her, she smiled brightly and called out, "Auntie, have some fruit." Yu Lily felt her heart soften. She went forward to take the fruit plate and said, "Come here, Auntie will feed you." "Thank you, Auntie, but I want to eat by myself. Dad said that if I can eat by myself in the future and don't drop it on my clothes, he will promise me one thing." Li Genue was a little proud as she spoke. She lowered her head and picked up an apple with a fruit fork. She held it out and said, "Auntie, have some fruit." "Thank you, Ursu." Yu Lily took it with a smile in her eyes. Li Genue was indescribably happy to be thanked by O Ming. She smiled and reached out her short hand to grab a fruit fork. She inserted a dragon fruit into it and ran towards O Ming shouting, "Uncle, eat some fruit." O Ming took it, gently rubbed her little head and said, "Thank you." Li Genue smiled happily and shouted, "You're welcome." Then she inserted two more and handed them to Li Mosen and Li Zhenqian. Just after the two little guys took it, the sound of the door opening came from outside. When Li Xiqing came in and saw O Ming and Yu Lily, he was surprised. "Dad!" Li Genue shouted happily. She ran toward Li Xiqing with her short legs and shouted, "Dad, hug!" It was colder outside than inside. Li Xiqing's body was cold. Seeing that the little girl was only wearing a thin nightdress, he moved aside and said, "Dad is cold. I will hug you later." Then he closed the door and took his daughter's hand. "Have you said hello to Uncle and Auntie?" "Yes. I poured juice for Uncle and Auntie and invited them to eat fruit. I also ate it. It didn't fall on me." As she spoke, she shook off Li Xiqing's hand, spun around, and yelled, "Isn't it great?" Li Xiqing had been busy all day. Seeing his daughter like this, he chuckled and said, "Great, my daughter is the best. Where's Mommy?" "Mom is boiling sweet water for Uncle and Auntie." Li Genue hugged Li Xiqing's leg and said, "Dad, you promised me that as long as I don't drop food on my body, you will promise me one thing." Li Xiqing's smile widened, and a smile appeared in his cold eyes. Because of this smile, his originally cold and distinct facial features softened a lot. Bending down, he picked up his daughter and walked inside. He asked, "What do you want me to promise you?" Su Chenxi asked. "I want to sleep with Daddy and Mommy. Other children sleep with Daddy and Mommy. I want to sleep too." "Who said that? Do you see the two brothers sleeping with Mom and Dad?" Little Red Flower next door said that she always sleeps with her parents. Li Genue rolled her round eyes and said, "Daddy is an adult. You can't go back on your words." Death. Chapter 1081. Looking at the serious look on the little girl's face, Li Xiqing suddenly felt a headache. Li Genue saw that her father did not speak, so she tilted her head and said, "Dad, are you really going to go back on your word?" Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows, held the little girl and said, "How could I? But Dad said that as long as I can do it, I will definitely agree, right?" Li Genue heard this and nodded. "But this thing Dad can't do it." When Li Xiqing said this, his expression did not change, and he said seriously, "This is something that can't be done, so Dad is not going back on his word." Li Genue heard this, and her little eyebrows frowned, and she asked unhappily, "Why?" Oh Ming and Yu Lily sat on the sofa and saw Li Xiqing's serious look of coaxing a child, and they couldn't help but laugh. Li Zhenqian and Li Mosen, the two little guys, looked over, and they all had doubts, waiting for Li Xiqing's next words. They saw that Li Xiqing put Li Zhenyue aside and said seriously, "Because if there is one more person in the bed, your mother will not be able to sleep." Hearing this, Li Zhenyue's face was full of doubt. However, when she saw the serious look on her father's face, she was immediately intimidated and asked, "Really? Really?" Li Xiqing nodded, and there was no hint of lying on his face. Oh Ming couldn't help but laugh, and he turned his head and looked at Yu Lily. Yu Lily's pair of eyes looked at the little girl who was scared, and her smile became wider, as if it was full of the glory of maternal love. So beautiful. Yu Lily's smile was more charming than that of the father and daughter. "Dad, I don't believe it." Li Zhenyue's voice was indescribably serious, and she said, "In the past when Dad didn't come home, Ursu often slept with Mom, but Mom could fall asleep. One more is fine but not two. That will make Mom uncomfortable," Li Xiqing said with a straight face. "Humph, then Dad can sleep with brother, and I can sleep with Mom." "That won't do either. If Daddy doesn't sleep with Mommy, he won't be able to sleep." Li Zhenyue was furious. She placed her hands on her hips and shouted, "Daddy, you are too childish. You are already so old, yet you still want to sleep with Mommy. You are already in your 30s. Can't you be more mature?" When he said that, both Oh Ming and Yu Lily burst out laughing. When Su Qianxi walked out with the sweet soup, she happened to hear what the little girl said. She smiled and shouted, "Ursu, how can you talk to Daddy like that?" Li Zhenyue snorted and crossed her arms over her chest. She turned around and shouted, "Mommy, Ursu wants to sleep with Mommy tonight. Ursu has to be obedient." Li Xiqing did not wait for Su Qianxi to speak. He picked up his daughter and said, "For the sake of Mom and Dad's health, you can't sleep with Mom and Dad. Change the condition." "No, I want to sleep with Mommy. Daddy, you go sleep with Big Brother." Li Zhenyue was very stubborn. She had no intention of being persuaded at all. She shouted, "I want to nurture Daddy's independent thinking and ability, just like how Daddy nurtures my brothers. You have to grow up by yourself. Do you understand, Daddy?" Chapter 1082. When Li Xiqing heard that, he slowly turned his head and looked at Oh Ming. However, his eyes were cold. When he glanced at him, the smile on Oh Ming's face immediately disappeared. He coughed and said, "This is a good way of education. It's very amiable." Li Xiqing retracted his gaze and said in a low voice, "Well said." Then he looked at his daughter and said, "Little one, Dad has grown up. He is different from you. You are different. Dad is an adult, but you are still like a child. You are not mature at all." Li Zhenyue pouted and said, "You can't be like this." Li Xiqing laughed and pinched her little nose. He said, "Go eat dessert with the brothers. Dad will talk to the uncles." "Can't I eat here?" Li Zhenyue looked at Li Xiqing with a pair of round eyes. "Yes, you can eat here." Yu Lily quickly waved her hand and said, "Qianqian, let me help you." "Okay." Su Qianxi nodded. After putting down the sweet soup, she took the bowl and began to serve the children. Li Xiqing looked at Oh Ming and asked, "Looking for me?" "No, I just wanted to bring you Lily to see the children." Oh Ming looked at the little girl sitting next to Li Xiqing. "Your daughter is really not like you at all." She looked like Su Qianxi, and her character was very different from Li Xiqing's. She was also very talkative. It was good to raise a daughter. Oh Ming began to piece together Yu Lily's face and his own in his mind. If her character was like Yu Lily, then it was over. He couldn't take care of two grandmothers. It was better to raise a son. Second brother's son was also raised well. He was not naughty and smart. As he thought about it, he looked at Yu Lily. With a smile on her face, Yu Lily happened to look over at Oh Ming. Oh Ming chuckled and said, "Tomorrow is the new year. Do you have any plans?" "What other plans can I have? I will take the children back to the old house and celebrate the new year with the family." Li Xiqing took a small bowl from Su Qianxi. After testing the temperature, he handed it to his daughter and said, "Be careful. It's hot. Eat slowly." Okay. Li Zhenyue held the small bowl and looked at the soup inside. She was about to drool. Li Jianqian and Li Mosen also wanted to eat and looked at Li Jianyue's small bowl. However, this was the way things were in this family. If there was good food and fun things to do, Mom and little sister would have them first. The two of them would come second, and Dad would be last. Seeing that Li Jianyue started to dig and eat, two pairs of eyes looked at her and then at Su Qianxi. "Have you two boys finished your homework?" Li Xiqing looked at them and asked casually. Li Jianqian and Li Mosen answered in unison, "Done." With that, they ran towards the room together. The two little guys ran up the stairs together. Su Qianxi was shocked and shouted, "Be careful, don't fall." "I won't," Li Jianqian replied and quickly went up with Li Mosen. Ming looked at the two little guys and gave Li Xiqing a thumbs up. Yu Lily said, "It's too obvious that you value women over men. It's nice to be your daughter." Chapter 1083. Hearing that, Li Xiqing didn't seem to find it inappropriate at all. He said, "Daughters are meant to be spoiled. Only when they are spoiled can they harm other people's sons. It's not that easy to marry our daughter." As he spoke, he didn't forget to squint at Ming and said matter-of-factly, "As for boys, of course, they must be able to shoulder the responsibility. Otherwise, how can they protect their sister in the future?" "Right." "That's right." Ming deeply agreed. Li Xiqing's words really touched the bottom of his heart. There should be a limit. Look at your daughter. Mom said she is a bit spoiled. Su Qianxi gently pushed Li Xiqing, a bit dissatisfied. Li Xiqing chuckled. "All right. You should teach her what she needs to be taught." Hearing that, Su Qianxi didn't want to talk to him anymore. She turned to look at Yu Lily and asked, "What are you going to do tomorrow?" Yu Lily's current identity was a bit awkward. If Ming went home, wouldn't Yu Lily be destined to be alone? Thinking of this, Su Qianxi suddenly realized the real reason why Ming brought Yu Lily here today. Understanding everything, Su Qianxi walked in the direction of Yu Lily and sat down next to her. She said, "I happen to have 2 tickets for the art exhibition. Why don't we go together?" Li Xiqing heard that and turned to look at Su Qianxi, slightly raising his eyebrows. Yesterday, he said that he wanted the two of them to go together, to get rid of the children and go to a world of just the two of them. How did it become a world of just the two of them now? Su Qianxi didn't seem to notice Li Xiqing's gaze. She looked at Yu Lily expectantly and asked, "How is it?" "Ah." Yu Lily clearly noticed Li Xiqing's strange look. Thinking about it, she said, "Don't you need to stay at home with your family? Tomorrow is New Year's Eve." "It doesn't matter. After tomorrow, I will be free at night. We will go at night. The art exhibition starts at 7 p.m. When we go, we can just watch the fun." Yu Lily wanted to go, but she had nothing to do anyway. Every year on New Year's Eve, Ming would stay at home. He would only come over to be with her in the afternoon on the first day of the year. This year would be no exception. She subconsciously glanced at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing also noticed her gaze and said, "Go ahead. I'll take the kids to see the fireworks tomorrow. After you're done with the art exhibition, come back and play with us." "Does that mean I'm inviting Yu Lily to celebrate the new year with me?" Yu Lily was pleasantly surprised, and her heart warmed. She nodded her head and said happily, "Okay. That's settled then. See you tomorrow night." She nodded and looked at Ming. Ming didn't say anything. He just looked at Yu Lily with a smile on his face. The two little guys, Li Jianqian and Li Mosen, finally came down from upstairs, each holding a box in their hands. After they went downstairs, they walked in the direction of Yu Lily and Ming. "Uncle, Auntie, this is for you," Li Jianqian and Li Mosen said at the same time and stuffed the boxes into their arms. Yu Lily and Ming were a little surprised and looked at the two little guys. Chapter 1084. It's all in here. After Li Jianqian stuffed the box into Ming's arms, his little face was full of seriousness, and he said, "Uncle, this is a gift from the 3 of us and our blessings. Please open it and have a look." "The 3 of you made it?" Ming felt a little strange. "You went up for so long just to do this?" "No, we are sharing the blessings, giving half of them to you, and the other half to you," Li Mosen said with a serious face. "This is also the homework that Dad gave us." Ming chuckled, took it, and said, "What kind of homework is this? I thought it was some kind of exercise, but I didn't expect it to be so different. Did you arrange it for them?" "It was their mother's idea. I arranged it." Li Xiqing was very satisfied with his reaction, and he looked a little proud. "The main thing is to test the children's perseverance and patience. Congratulations on being the first guest of our family. You are lucky." When Ming heard that, he felt that Li Xiqing was full of the sour smell of happiness. At the same time, he did not forget to look in the direction of Yu Lily. Yu Lily had already taken the lead and opened the lid. When she saw the box full of colorful flowers, her eyes were filled with amazement. She exclaimed, "Did you guys make this?" Li Mosen was young, but he was very sensitive. Seeing Yu Lily's obviously amazing appearance, he felt excited from the bottom of his heart. Li Mosen nodded and said, "I made Xin, Ursu made the stars, and Desu made the paper cranes inside. This is the homework that Dad gave us a few days ago. Each of us has to make 199 folded papers." As he spoke, he looked at Yu Lily's eyes, and his speech became slower and slower. His face became redder and redder, and he lowered his head slightly, looking quite helpless. Yu Lily saw that Li Mosen was nervous, smiled, hugged his little head, kissed him gently on the forehead, and said, "That's great. Auntie likes it very much. If my son can be as good as you in the future, that would be great." When Li Mosen heard that, he almost jumped with joy. He looked up at Yu Lily, nodded, and said with a red face, "Thank you, Auntie. In the future, your children will definitely be better than us." The smile on Yu Lily's face widened, and she couldn't believe that such modest words came from the mouth of a 5-year-old child. Such a child could be seen from his family's education. No wonder he was the child of Li Xiqing and Su Chenxi. He taught him better than anyone else. The little boy, Li Jianqian, who was standing not far from Ming, heard Li Mosen's words and said, "We made 199 each. We gave Uncle and Auntie 99 each. There's still one more here." Li Jianqian took out a few pieces of paper from his pocket, pink hearts, white cranes, and yellow stars. Li Jianyue took a mouthful of sweet soup and asked in confusion, "Li Jianyue Li?" Chapter 1085. Ursu held a small bowl and nodded. Her eyes lit up and she said, "So that's how it is. Brother is so amazing." "Of course, I am your brother." Li Jianqian was not modest at all. He raised his face and said naturally. Li Jianqian and Li Jianyue had 2 children who were only 4 years old this year. Yu Lily looked at the 2 of them. Her eyes were filled with envy and emotion. These children were so smart. It was not like the flexibility and intelligence of their age. It was hard to imagine that such a smart child was a child who had lost 4 years of fatherly love. "Brother Mosen is also very good." Li Jianyue held the small bowl and said, "Mom, I want more." "You can't eat any more. You can't eat so much at night." Li Xiqing took her small bowl down and put it on the table. Then he took a tissue and wiped the corner of her mouth. He looked at the residue on her nightgown and said, "Look at your clothes. What is this?" When Li Jianyue heard that, she blinked her eyes and looked down at her clothes. She exclaimed, "What's going on?" "You have to ask yourself. What did you do?" Li Xiqing said as he wiped her. "You have no right to make conditions now." "No." Li Jianyue was anxious and shouted, "Dad, you must be cheating. Dad framed me, right?" Li Xiqing raised his hand and pinched her little face. He said, "Little bad girl, who did you learn from? You actually want to frame your father?" Li Jianyue pouted and said unhappily, "I don't care. Dad is bad. I just want to sleep with Mom." "No." Li Xiqing said faintly, "You have grown up and have to sleep by yourself. You see that your brothers are very strong. Why do you like to cheat so much?" "I don't." Li Jianyue was even more aggrieved. She sat on the sofa and pouted. She looked at Su Chenxi and said, "Mom." "It's useless to call Mom. I have the final say on this matter." Li Xiqing covered her eyes mercilessly and said, "Mosen, take your sister back to sleep." Li Mosen quietly breathed a sigh of relief and walked over happily. He said, "Let's go, Ursu. I will take you back to sleep." "I don't want to. I don't want to." Li Jianyue looked like she was about to cry. "I just want to sleep with Mommy. Daddy." Sleep with brother. Why do you want to sleep with mummy? Su Qianxi walked over, held her daughter in her arms, and said, Ursu, you have to listen to daddy, so that daddy will love you more in the future. No, I don't want to sleep with my brothers anymore. Granny Rong said that girls can't sleep with boys. Li Jianyue pouted. Men and women can't be separated clearly. If it was in ancient times, I would be put into a pig's cage and drowned with a big rock. O Ming couldn't help laughing and said, That's called drowning in a pig cage. Yes, drowning him in a pig cage. Li Jianyue held Su Qianxi's hand and said pitifully, I don't want to drown. Mom, I want to sleep with you. Seeing this, not only O Ming, but Yu Lily and Su Qianxi also laughed together. Li Xiqing felt a little helpless. He reached out and grabbed her saying, They are your brothers. You are still young and can't sleep alone. Your brothers will take care of you. Chapter 1086. Li Jianyue almost cried as she spoke. She waved her hands and shouted at Su Qianxi, Mom, look, Dad is bullying me. Li Xiqing held his daughter's collar and smiled helplessly. He said, Little one, you still know to ask for help. Be quiet. Li Jianyue immediately shut up and became quiet. She turned her head and looked at Su Qianxi pitifully. She said, Mom, you don't help me. Su Qianxi laughed out loud. She reached out her hands and held the little one in her arms. She said, Okay, sleep with Mom tonight. Let Dad sleep with your brothers. No. One big and one small, they said in unison. Li Xiqing and Li Mosen looked at each other. Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Mosen. The little one met Li Xiqing's gaze, and her overly white face began to blush. She bowed her head slightly and said, Ursu, Dad and Mom are husband and wife. They should sleep together. You can't sleep with them. That way you will become a third party. O Ming was even choked by his saliva. Why did this family not play by the rules? Is this a third party? Who taught you that? Yu Lily shook her head with a smile and said, Third parties are not like this. Only those who destroy the relationship between husband and wife are called third parties. Do you know that? Yes, this is a third party. Li Xiqing nodded and looked at Li Mosen with a touch of appreciation in his eyes. He said, Ursu, you are destroying the relationship between Mom and Dad. Do you know that? Li Jianyue blinked, looked at Li Xiqing, and then looked at Su Qianxi. She was a little confused and asked, Mom, really? Su Qianxi was speechless for a while and didn't know what to say. Really? Of course not. But since Li Xiqing said so, she couldn't tell the truth at this time. How could he face the children like this? For a moment, she was in a dilemma. O Ming coughed softly and said, Ursu, Uncle can prove that you are not a third party. But if you do this, you are no different from a third party. Don't do this kind of thing, understand? When Li Jianyue heard that, she pursed her lips. Her big eyes were moist. She looked at O Ming and said in disbelief, Really? O Ming nodded with a serious look on his face. It's true, so you have to listen to me. As he spoke, he glanced at the time and said, It's almost 9 o'clock. Aren't you going to bed yet? Mosen, Desu, take your sister to bed. Su Qianxi immediately followed his words and said, Yes, go and take your sister to bed. Li Mosen was the first to run up and said, Ursu, let's go. Li Jianyue's tears were in her eyes, and they were about to fall. However, she still climbed down from Su Qianxi's body and followed Li Mosen. However, as her little feet stepped on the ground, her body trembled. She looked back at Su Qianxi 3 times with every step and sniffed before following Li Mosen up the stairs. Li Jianqian said, Dad, Mom, I'm going too. Go ahead. He nodded, waved his hand and whispered, Remember to make your sister happy. Okay. Li Jianqian nodded and ran up the stairs. Be careful. Su Qianxi shouted behind him. Walk slowly. Don't run. Chapter 1087. After the children went up, Li Xiqing picked up the dessert bowl that Su Qianxi had just put down in front of him and scooped a mouthful. O Ming stared at it and said with some surprise, I thought you don't eat sweets? Li Xiqing heard the words, glanced at O Ming indifferently and said, What do you know? My wife's cooking is very delicious. Su Qianxi's cheeks were slightly red, and her ears were hot. She said, no, he was talking nonsense. However, seeing Li Xiqing's serious look, Ming was also skeptical, so he also picked up his bowl and took a bite. Li Xiqing's eyes were fixed on Ming, as if Ming said one bad word, he could beat him at any time. Ming nodded seriously, looked at Su Qianxi and said, it's really good, very delicious, sister-in-law's cooking is good. Su Qianxi blushed even more and reached out to pat Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing looked back, took another bite and said, honey. Yes. Su Qianxi looked up at Li Xiqing and raised her eyebrows in surprise. Do you think that boy Mosen likes our daughter? What kind of like do you mean? Su Qianxi looked at Li Xiqing, her eyes wide. How is it possible? They said they are brother and sister. He himself knows that we are not related by blood, and he has been trembling with us, but he doesn't say it, and he is very careful in his behavior. Did you notice? Li Xiqing said indifferently, and there was a hint of thought in his deep and cold eyes. Impossible, he treats her as a sister, and such a small child, how can he know so many things? Su Qianxi denied. Don't think too much, children are still young. Yu Lily also thought that Li Xiqing was thinking too much, and said, that child is Tang Menjing's child, right? He is only 5 years old this year, and he can't have that kind of feeling. He is good to her. Isn't it normal for siblings? When Ming heard this, he slightly raised his eyebrows, and suddenly thought of the word no that Li Mosen and Li Xiqing had said at the same time. At that time, he felt that this little guy, who looked young, was very sensible. However, after Li Xiqing's reminder, there was still a bit of that feeling. However, could such a young child really have such thoughts? After thinking about it, Ming said, I think it's possible. Your daughter is pretty and cute. Which boy wouldn't like her? When Li Xiqing heard this, he felt as if he had finally found a soulmate. He said, right? You think so too? We really can't let them live together anymore. Ursu is right. It's not good for men and women to not touch each other. Ursu kicks off her blanket when she sleeps at night. She can't sleep alone. Su Qianxi looked at Li Xiqing and said, at night, Mosen will cover Ursu with the quilt. Daisu will occasionally wake up to drink water and cover her with the quilt. If it were up to you, our daughter would have frozen to death. As if he didn't hear the rebuke in her words, he said, then buy a sleeping bag, tie her up, and let her out the next day. Isn't that better? She glared at him and kicked him rudely. Are you raising a child or an animal? That is your daughter. Chapter 1088. Hearing that, Su Qianxi felt even more annoyed. She reached out and punched him, shouting, that's too much. Li Xiqing reached out and caught her fist firmly, the corner of his mouth gently curling up. Su Qianxi's punch missed, and then she raised her other hand, wanting to hit him in the face. Li Xiqing smiled and raised his hand. Unexpectedly, Su Qianxi changed her route halfway, hooked her fist, and hit down. The wind of the punch was like a whip. It brought a cool breeze to his face, which was shocking, but it made the smile on Li Xiqing's face deeper. Seeing that Su Qianxi was about to hit his chin, Li Xiqing turned his hand back and grabbed her wrist. The fist was less than a centimeter away from her chin. Li Xiqing pulled her hand, then held her in his arms, and whispered, okay, stop fooling around. There are guests here. Su Qianxi's face turned red, and she struggled. Let go. If I let go, you'll hit me. I won't let go. Li Xiqing said with a serious face. What I said just now is serious. Look at our daughter, she is so young, and she knows to set up a barrier between men and women. It can be seen that this child has begun to grow up, and Mosen seems to have some wild ambitions. I don't want to give my daughter to my son. Hearing that, Su Qianxi felt that what Li Xiqing said was a little reasonable. Li Mosen was their son, and Li Jianyue was their biological daughter. The palm of their hand was flesh, and the back of their hand was also flesh. Although they were not related by blood, in the eyes of the husband and wife, both children were the same. Not to mention whether they had this possibility. Just the possibility that Li Mosen had this idea was enough to make her unable to accept it. This was a bit like watching your own child. This, Su Qianxi suddenly shivered and said, why don't we let Mosen sleep alone, and Daisu and Ursu share a room? Idiot, What do you want Mosin to think? Li Xiqing poked her nose and said, Aren't you obviously letting Mosin think too much? It's not like you don't know how sensitive this child is. Su Chenxi also felt that something was wrong when she was reminded. This time he was frowning. After thinking about it he said, Then let Ursu sleep with us. Anyway, our bed is so big, and our daughter is so small. She can sleep in it. No. Li Xiqing refused and said, The bed is big, but my place is small. He pointed at his heart and looked at her seriously. If my daughter comes to disturb us in the middle of the night, I will feel uncomfortable. Ugh, Su Chenxi's face burned even hotter, and she subconsciously glanced at Ming and Yu Lily, who were not far away. Facing their obvious ambiguous and envious gazes, she was so embarrassed that she couldn't speak. Su Chenxi blushed from her cheeks to the tips of her ears. She lowered her head and whispered, Let me go. Lily and the others are still here. Li Xiqing looked indifferent. Chapter 1089. For people like them, this was called playing hooligans. Of course, Li Xiqing would not say this out loud. He gave Ming a look to let him figure it out on his own. Then he continued to hold his wife and said, Just one sleeping bag for Ursu. Daesu and Mosin don't need sleeping bags. They sleep like me. Hearing that, Su Chenxi, who had calmed down with great difficulty, suddenly exploded again. She turned her head and growled, What do you mean? Like you. Very obedient. Liar. No. Yes. Well, since you are so determined, I can't help it. Su Chenxi heard this and laughed. She hit him and said, Shut up. Tut. Ming couldn't stand it anymore. He glanced at Yu Lily and said, I used to think that he was a very serious person. I didn't expect this guy to be so coquettish on the inside. I blame myself for being too young. Yu Lily heard this and couldn't help laughing. However, her smile was full of envy. If there is nothing else, go back. We are going to sleep. Li Xiqing mercilessly asked her to leave. Even the reason was so simple and rude. Su Chenxi quickly covered his mouth and shouted with a red face, Li Xiqing, what are you talking about? Li Xiqing looked down at her with a little smile in his eyes. Ming felt like he was going blind. He covered his eyes and said, I came to see you, not to see you show off your love and then leave. What's the matter? Li Xiqing raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Ming. Ming nodded and said, Do you know that a chemical called Homaya has recently come out? It was a completely unfamiliar term. Su Chenxi and Yu Lily were both confused. They didn't even know what Homaya was. However, when Li Xiqing heard it, he nodded slightly and said, I have heard a little about it. Ming's eyes lit up. Really? Where did you hear it? At my brother's place. Third brother? Yes, he has a good friend who used to be a military doctor at the front line. Later, he retired with my brother and is doing some research on his own. My third brother's company has just started and doesn't have extra cash flow, so he asked me to invest in him. I think that's the name of the project. Oh my God! Ming almost jumped up. Looking at Li Xiqing, he was sure that he was not joking. He exclaimed, I'm looking for this now. Second brother, have you invested in that project? A little. I urgently need this medicine to concoct. Can you help me get it? Ming was very excited. He briefly explained his mother's condition. Finally, he looked at Li Xiqing and said seriously, I have to solve this matter first before I can completely get rid of the Shen family. Otherwise, I will be completely controlled by Shen Luo N. So, he doesn't have time to deal with me. But, I'm afraid that he'll come to look for trouble with our clan once he recovers. So, got it. Li Xiqing sat up straight and reached out to take the phone from the table. After Li Xiqing hung up the phone, he looked at Ming and asked, Can I deliver it tomorrow? Yes, that's great. Ming was extremely excited. He had been worried about this medicine for a long time. He came to Li Xiqing just to give it a try, but he didn't expect. It was rare for him to come to see him, and there was such a big change. Chapter 1090. It was New Year's Eve. The children got up early and arrived at the old house. After greeting the elders, They gathered in the study and watched Li Xiao write the couplets. Old Master Li's hair was almost completely white. His withered hand held a walking stick as he sat by the side and watched his son. Originally, Old Master Li was the one who wrote the couplets. Now that he couldn't hold the pen, he could only leave it to his son. The old man looked at him and reminded him, "You need to use more strength." The old voice rang out, and Li Xiao's hand immediately tightened a little. Old Master Li nodded with satisfaction and said, "That's right." As he spoke, he looked at the three children and said, "Watch how your grandfather writes. You three little guys, you have to practice calligraphy in the future. This is the quintessence of the nation. You can't lose it." Li Jianqian and Li Mosen nodded, and Li Jianyue, with a pair of big round eyes, asked, "Great-grandpa, what is a quintessence of the nation?" It is the unique things that have been passed down from ancient times to the present. For example, calligraphy, paper cutting, guqin, chess, books, and paintings. These are all quintessence of the nation. In the future, no matter what you do or what you do, don't lose these things. Old Master Li's voice was gentle, with an old but extremely deep calmness. "Ursu, come here." Li Jianyue leaned over and called out sweetly, "Great-grandpa." The smile on Old Master Li's face condensed. The wrinkles looked a little deep, but it was full of joy. After pulling the little girl over, he said, "I'm not worried about your brothers. My grandchildren and great-grandchildren are all excellent children. But, the only thing I'm worried about now is you. In the future, you must find a good man. At least, he can't be worse than your brother. Do you understand?" Li Jianyue didn't seem to understand, but soon said with a smile, "In the future, I want to marry Brother Mosen." A child's words carried no harm. When such a clear voice came out, Li Xiao's hand trembled slightly. With such a shake, the brush on the originally clean and tidy red paper slightly deviated. Li Mosen's face suddenly turned red, and he turned his head to look at Li Jianyue. However, Old Master Li disagreed and said, "What are you talking about? He is your brother. You can't get married." "Is that so?" Li Jianyue opened her eyes and blinked. But Brother Mosen said so. When Ursu grew up, she would marry Brother Mosen. However, before Li Jianyue could finish her sentence, she heard Li Mosen shout, "Ursu, shoo!" Li Jianyue immediately swallowed her words back into her stomach. She raised her fluffy little head and looked at Li Sun with her big eyes. She smiled and said, "I know, great-grandfather." Old Master Li looked at Li Jianyue and Li Mosen. He vaguely understood something. He didn't ask or say anything else. He would just let nature take its course. After Li Xiao finished writing, he put down the brush and shouted, "Jianqian, go and ask your uncle to come in." Li Jianqian turned and ran out, shouting, "Dad, uncle, Grandpa's calling for you." The three brothers were sitting on the sofa chatting. Hearing the child's cry, they knew what was going on. Chapter 1091. After putting up the couplets, Su Qianxi and Qin Shuhua had already prepared dinner. The family sat together and ate happily. Captain Li looked at his children and grandchildren with a smile on his face. The atmosphere at Yu Lily's place was completely different from that of the Li family. O Ming's parents were very concerned about this holiday. O Ming could do whatever he wanted for the 365 days of the year, but on this day, he had to have a family reunion dinner at home before going to do his own things. For more than 30 years, there had been no exceptions. When Yu Lily woke up early in the morning, her side was already empty. There was a note on the bedside table. It was O Ming's handwriting. On it was written, "There is breakfast on the table. Eat it when it's hot." Did O Ming buy it on purpose? She got up and found that her cotton pajamas were wrinkled and a little messy, but they were still intact. After washing up, she went to the dining room to eat and went back to her room to paint. She painted like that for the whole day. Yu Lily continued to paint until she felt hungry. She then opened the curtains in the room. However, when she opened the curtains, she found that the surroundings were already dark. In winter, the sky darkened early. Yu Lily looked at the time. It was only 5 p.m. After changing and putting on some light makeup, Yu Lily had a quick meal downstairs before taking a taxi to the place she had arranged to meet Su Qianxi. The art exhibition that Su Qianxi had arranged was held by an artist who had become particularly famous in recent years. He was famous for his personality and his poverty. It was said that the artist was already middle-aged, but he had no wife. It was said that the artist had no family, but he had friends everywhere. He wandered around and left his name everywhere. His name was Wen Fenglin. He was a very unique and frank uncle. He was truly talented. The things that he painted were very distinctive. He liked to combine landscapes and flowers to depict everything. Yu Lily had only found out about this artist when she was looking for inspiration for his style. People called him the wandering artist. It was 1858 when she took a taxi to the venue. Su Chenxi had a habit of always arriving earlier. No matter what kind of date it was or who it was with, it had always been like this. So when she got out of the car, Yu Lily looked around, but she couldn't find Su Chenxi. When Yu Lily was about to call and ask where Su Chenxi was, her shoulder suddenly felt warm and heavy. Yu Lily paused, then turned off the screen of her phone. When she was about to speak, she saw the face behind her. All the words were instantly stuck in her throat. The face behind him was handsome and devilish. A pair of bright almond-shaped eyes sparkled as he looked at Yu Lily and asked, "Have you waited long?" Yu Lily blinked her eyes in a daze. After a long while, she reacted and asked, "Why are you here?" "Why can't it be me?" Ming raised his eyebrows slightly. "Let's go. The art exhibition is about to begin." His warm palm took Yu Lily's hand and led her inside without saying a word. Yu Lily was still in a daze when she entered the venue. She asked, "Today is New Year's Eve." "I know." Ming turned his head. On his slightly evil face, the corners of his lips curled up into an indescribable gentleness. "That's why I came to find you." Chapter 1092. A little bit. Ming seemed to be in a good mood. He pulled her inside. "When I saw my woman at the back, I felt that I was special." "My woman." Yu Lily rolled her eyes at him, and snorted as she turned her head away. However, there was a faint smile on the corners of her lips. There were faint dimples on both sides of her cheeks. The atmosphere was beautifully decorated by such joy. Ming pulled her in and paid the tickets. The two of them walked side by side into the Kingstown Art Exhibition Center. It was New Year's Eve. For the wandering artist, it might not be a big holiday, but for many people, it was a very important day. The day was the time for gatherings. But, at night, there were many people who came to the art exhibition. As soon as she entered, Yu Lily was captivated by the unique technique of the first painting. Beside it, there was a sign with the words, "Wen Fenglin's famous work wins first prize at the International Art Competition." The title of the painting was, "The Most Beautiful." At first glance, it was a colorful scene with flowers clustered around it. But upon closer inspection, there was another kind of beauty to it. The lines of the flowers outlined a flock of birds, like swallows and butterflies. From afar, it looked like a young girl sleeping soundly. Her eyes were closed, and her long curly hair was tied up. Her beautiful figure was clearly outlined. It was as if a skirt was swaying in the wind. It was as if the young girl in front of him was the flower, the bird, and the butterfly. The lines were perfectly blended, without the slightest sense of incongruity. One look was enough to stun the world. Every part of it was exquisite beyond compare. Every single pattern was just a slightly more exquisite illustration. But when these ordinary illustrations were put together, they became a painting that was enough to make everyone gasp in admiration. Yu Lily couldn't help but move closer to the railing to take a closer look. Beautiful. It was indeed the most beautiful. Yu Lily had never seen such a stunning painting. There was such a painting on the internet, but it was compressed by various websites. It was not as stunning as seeing the real thing up close. Yu Lily was slightly dazed and couldn't help but say, "It's so beautiful." Ming nodded his head. His eyes couldn't help but be attracted to it. "It's very beautiful." As he spoke, a pair of eyes quietly moved to Yu Lily, full of tenderness. Yu Lily looked for a while and found that two girls were constantly taking photos. One of them said, "You're amazing to be able to get such a ticket. Send me the photos later. I'm going to post them on my WeChat moments to show off." Yu Lily's tranquil mood, which had been brought by the painting in front of her, disappeared without a trace in such words. Such a beautiful work of art was so beautiful that it transcended the mortal world. Saying such a thing was undoubtedly a great blasphemy to it. Yu Lily looked up at the words on the bulletin board. It was clearly said, "No photos are allowed." Yu Lily seemed to have found a reason to speak, so she stepped forward and said with a little anger, "It seems that it has been clearly stated that no photos are allowed. Can't you see it? Mr. Painter didn't put his painting here for you to take pictures and post them on your moments." Chapter 1093. When Yu Lily was about to say something, her hand was pulled by O Ming, and without a word, they walked inside. Yu Lily didn't understand, so she turned to look at O Ming. O Ming's footsteps were a little fast. After he pulled her inside, he breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Silly girl, you are too impulsive. If they want to take pictures, let them take pictures. If you talk about them like that, you might be recognized." When Yu Lily heard that, she suddenly reacted. She was a little surprised and covered her mouth, feeling a little annoyed. "I forgot." O Ming was a little helpless, so he pulled her inside. The exhibition center was very big, and there were a lot of paintings hanging. As Yu Lily and O Ming walked in, they were attracted by all kinds of paintings, but the style was the same and beautiful. Whether it was the brushwork or the color, they couldn't help but be amazed. That day was New Year's Eve, so there were a lot of people in Kingstown. However, such an art exhibition wasn't something that just anyone could attend. Although there were a lot of people along the way, compared to the sea of people outside, it was quiet and relaxed. Seeing the end, Yu Lily still felt a little unsatisfied. Every painting was very exquisite and beautiful. "There's another pair here," someone called out from behind. Yu Lily instinctively turned her head around to look. It was a woman who looked like she was wearing expensive clothes. Hearing the woman say that, the people who were originally behind the woman all walked up. However, their footsteps were obviously not as long as any of the paintings in front of them. After a few glances, they turned and walked away. Behind them, another group of people went up, but the result was the same. Yu Lily couldn't help but go up and look at the paintings closely. All the paintings in front of her looked colorful, bold, and full of personality. From the paintings, one could imagine that this wandering artist was a very bold and unruly person. All the paintings along the way were of women, and there were even paintings of men and women together naked. Bold, beautiful, and a little erotic. However, this final painting was much simpler than any of the previous ones. In fact, it could even be said that this painting was completely out of place compared to the previous ones. Yu Lily heard O Ming's questioning voice, and she couldn't help but go forward to take a closer look. The entire painting was beige in color, from all sides to the inside, from light to dark. At the very center, the light beige color had already turned into a light brown color, forming an umbilical cord. The faint lines outlined a baby, sucking on his fingers with his eyes closed. There was filth on his body, which looked like bloodstains. However, it was different from the misty lines in the previous paintings. The lines in this painting were very clear, and the colors were darker. Even his brushwork and colors were completely different. It was as if it was painted by another person. When O Ming saw this, he raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "This shouldn't have been painted by the same person, right? The difference between their styles is too big." Yu Lily looked at the painting in front of her and said, "It was painted by a single person." As she spoke, she leaned closer to look at the paper. The overall color of the painting is beige, but the paper doesn't look like it's made in modern times. It must have been painted a long time ago. What do you know? An explosive shout rang out without the slightest bit of precaution. The voice was very familiar. Both O Ming and Yu Lily felt their hearts skip a beat in shock. Chapter 1094. Both Yu Lily and O Ming turned their heads almost at the same time. When they saw the person behind them, O Ming couldn't believe it and cried out, "Mom!" Yu Lily had never met Xiao Ziqing, but she had heard her voice. However, when she heard O Ming's shout, her heart skipped a beat. Subconsciously, she wanted to hide. Looking at Xiao Ziqing in front of her, she unconsciously took a step back. Xiao Ziqing looked at O Ming in front of her and said angrily, "Didn't you say you were going to meet Li Xiqing? Is this Li Xiqing?" Hearing Xiao Ziqing's words, Yu Lily suddenly felt a little sad. His chest tightened, and he turned to look at O Ming. O Ming was speechless for a while. When he saw the eyes around him, His face quickly darkened. He said, "Mom, this is an art exhibition. If you have anything to say, let's talk about it at home." "Little Xiao, why are you so angry? If you have something to say it nicely." A middle-aged man's voice came from behind Xiao Ziqing. His voice sounded a little hoarse, as if he had a sore throat. Following the voice, Zhang Xian saw a middle-aged man. He looked to be in his 40s or 50s and wore a pair of black-rimmed glasses. His gray hair was tied behind his head. He walked over with a smile on his face. There were 2 dimples on both sides of his cheeks, and he looked very peaceful. He was slightly plump and wore an old-fashioned gray Chinese tunic suit. It was very clean and tidy, but it also looked very unique. On his slightly rough left hand was a slightly black silver ring. It was a simple design, but on his hand, it was indescribably fitting. Xiao Ziqing turned her head and saw Wen Fenglin. Her anger flared as she said, "How can I not be angry? This is the woman I told you about who keeps pestering my son. Of all the things she could have done at such a young age, why did she choose to be a mistress? Didn't your parents teach you to have self-respect? You even encouraged my son to lie. What, Li Xiqing? He was just fooling around with you." When Ming heard that, his originally respectful expression immediately darkened. He took a step forward and hid Yu Lily behind him. With some dissatisfaction he yelled, "Mom, what you said is too unpleasant to listen to. She's my girlfriend now, not some mistress." "Ha! You're actually talking back to me for this woman. Do you even know who I am?" Xiao Ziqing was so angry that her eyes turned red. She wanted to go up and teach Ming a lesson, but she was held back by the people behind her. She turned around and saw that it was Wen Fenglin. Wen Fenglin tugged at her coat and gently tugged it back. "Let's talk this out. Xiao Qiao, you weren't such a rash person in the past. Why are you so impulsive now? You don't understand the situation at all. This woman is too much. Not only did she make my son fall head over heels for her, she even set a trap." "Enough." Wen Fenglin cut off Xiao Ziqing's voice. The words that were on the tip of Xiao Ziqing's tongue stopped abruptly. The people around them heard the commotion and looked over. The smile on Wen Fenglin's face was no longer there. He said, "If you have anything to say, let's talk inside." Yu Lily stood in the same place, feeling uncomfortable. Chapter 1095. Misunderstanding? I don't think it's something that can be resolved with just a simple sentence. Yu Lily's eyes darkened when she heard that. She looked up at Ming and saw his serious expression. She nodded her head. More and more people were looking over. Ming covered Yu Lily and followed Wen Fenglin into the room. It was a lounge with 2 easels. On the table next to it, there were not only paints for painting, but also a bunch of colored pencils and markers. After Wen Fenglin closed the door and windows, Xiao Ziqing couldn't hold it in any longer. She turned around and saw Ming escorting Yu Lily into the room. Her anger flared up. This kid is crazy. He's actually been bewitched by a vixen. How can such a woman be worthy of the family? How can she be worthy of Ming? Xiao Ziqing walked forward and pulled her son over forcefully. She shouted, "Xiao, go home first. I have something to say to this young lady." This young lady. There wasn't anything wrong with that form of address. But in Yu Lily's ears, it was so piercing. Looking at Xiao Ziqing before her, she realized that this rich madam's face didn't hide her disgust at all. Her eyes were filled with contempt and disdain. It was exactly the same as the way Li Da's wife had looked at her back in the imperial capital. But Xiao Ziqing's eyes were even more blatant and disgusted than that woman's. Yu Lily didn't feel good in her heart, but on the surface, she still maintained the calmness from before. "Mom, if there's anything you want to say, we can talk it out face to face. There's no need to ask me to leave. I think you have some misunderstanding about Yu Lily." "Misunderstanding?" Xiao Ziqing looked at her coldly. "There's no misunderstanding. Xiao, you're blinded by the situation. What's so good about this woman? She has no upbringing, no culture, and no inner qualities. Does she think she can seduce my son just because she has a pretty face?" With just a few tricks up her sleeve, she was able to bring Shen Manting and Shen Luo and down together. She was indeed formidable. But such a vicious woman must never be allowed into their family. Xiao Ziqing looked at Yu Lily with an even more indescribable disgust and impatience. I like her, so I'm willing to be with her. Yu Lily is a very good girl. You must have some misunderstandings about her. There are some things that we can discuss at home. I'll explain them to you slowly when we get back. Mom, Oming's mood dropped even further, and he said in a low voice, I know exactly what I'm doing. There's no need. Xiao Ziqing shouted. Fenglin is my good friend, not an outsider. With that, she looked in Wen Fenglin's direction and said, Fenglin, this is my son. His name is O. Based on O Ming's current reputation and achievements, Wen Fenglin had long heard of his name. He smiled and nodded at O Ming. He extended his hand and said, The younger generation will surpass the older. I'm Wen Fenglin. Hello. Hello, Mr. Wen. O Ming gently shook Wen Fenglin's hand but quickly let go. What, Mr. Wen? Call him Uncle Wen. Xiao Ziqing corrected. O Ming didn't immediately change his words. He looked at Xiao Ziqing with an unhappy expression and said, Mom, there are some things we should talk about when we get back. It's not convenient to talk outside. Chapter 1096. Xiao Ziqing's words were impolite. Every word was filled with disgust for Yu Lily. Yu Lily calmed herself down and said, Auntie? What, Auntie? Didn't your mother teach you not to address me as you please? Call me Mrs. O. Xiao Ziqing's words were harsh. When O Ming heard that, his face darkened. He called out, Mom. But Xiao Ziqing didn't give him a chance to finish his sentence. She cut him off and looked at Yu Lily. In a sharp voice, she said, Before Manting became the future daughter-in-law of the O family, she called me Auntie. Do you think you can be on equal footing with Manting? In Xiao Ziqing's eyes, she couldn't. Such words were obviously disdainful and humiliating. It was extremely disrespectful. It was the most humiliating thing Yu Lily had ever heard in her life. Even what O Ming had said in the past couldn't compare to the humiliation that Xiao Ziqing's words had inflicted on her. Just as she was about to retort, she heard the middle-aged man's voice. The smile on Wen Fenglin's face had long disappeared. He said, Xiao Qiao, you've gone overboard with your words. Regardless of why you hate this lady so much, everyone should be equal. Isn't it inappropriate for you to categorize them in such a manner? Wen Fenglin asked. When Xiao Ziqing heard that, she subconsciously recalled the background of Wen Fenglin and her best friend. Her voice faltered, and she quickly said, Fenglin, I didn't mean anything by it. Regardless of whether you meant anything by it or not, don't you think it's a little cruel to treat a child this way? Wen Fenglin's eyes were filled with regret. This child looks much younger than your son. Xiao Qiao, if you have anything to say, calm down and say it. Because you would never know. Which sentence you would say would become a lifetime of pain for the child. It would become the key to their separation. When Xiao Ziqing saw Wen Fenglin's expression, she knew that she might have said the wrong thing. She waved her hand and said, Fenglin, sit down and talk calmly, Wen Fenglin said. I'll get someone to brew some tea. There's no need, Fenglin. Wen Fenglin had already turned around and walked to the door of the lounge. There's no need, Mr. Wen, Yu Lily called out. When Wen Fenglin heard Yu Lily's voice, he froze on the spot and turned his head. Yu Lily continued, I don't think I have anything to say to O Ming's mother. As she spoke, she looked at Xiao Ziqing and said, Auntie, to me, other than being O Ming's mother, you are not worthy of any respect. His voice was sonorous as he looked at Xiao Ziqing. There was no hesitation in his words, and there was a hint of anger in them. Xiao Ziqing was so angry that she laughed. What? O Ming was shocked. He quickly covered her mouth and said, What are you talking about? Don't say it. Xiao Ziqing was a person who couldn't take criticism. At home, even O Ming's father didn't dare to say anything to her. Over the years, Xiao Ziqing had been spoiled. Coupled with her rapid rise in status, ordinary people rarely spoke to her like this. Xiao Ziqing already had a bad opinion of Yu Lily. If she were to say that out loud, she was afraid. Chapter 1097. Seeing that Xiao Ziqing was obviously going to explode, O Ming closed his eyes and cursed in his heart. Yu Lily removed O Ming's hand and continued, It was my fault for calling you auntie just now. I thought that you were an elder, but the way you have always spoken doesn't make me feel like an elder. I think an elder should have the attitude of an elder to teach the younger generation. But, with all due respect, this is the first time I've met you. Apart from your age, I don't see any of the attitude of an elder. In other words, she was saying that Xiao Ziqing was taking advantage of her seniority. Even women couldn't stand being called old, let alone Xiao Ziqing. Shut up. Xiao Ziqing was furious. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to lecture me? I don't have the right to lecture you, Yu Lily said. I'm just saying what I think. I think what I said is the same as you saying that I can't be on equal footing with Shen Manting, right? Xiao Ziqing was so angry that her face turned red. She said angrily, what I said is the truth. What I said is also the truth. Yu Lily's eyes darkened. She continued, we are all honest people. You say the truth, and I say the truth. Then we are even. But, could they really be even? From the beginning, the disparity between her and O Ming's mother's status was huge. Now, her behavior was undoubtedly lowering her image in front of O Ming's mother. It was unfair. However, such an action made Yu Lily's mood, which had been depressed for a long time, relax for a moment. She felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. Xiao Ziqing was so angry that she laughed. Do you know what you are saying? You are cutting off your own path. I can't let you into my family. You want to be with my son? In your dreams. She had expected it. But, hearing this, Yu Lily still felt suffocated. Uncomfortable. She wanted to be with O Ming. She really, really wanted to be with him. But, regardless of identity, background or values, she was incompatible with this family. Looking at Xiao Ziqing, who seemed to have the upper hand, Yu Lily felt a little funny. Could it be that if I didn't say anything, you would let me be with O Ming? Dream on. Xiao Ziqing sneered. My son will never marry a woman like you. If others were to find out that our son had married a woman like you, they would probably laugh at us. So the result is the same. Yu Lily smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in her smile. Auntie, I'm sorry. Xiao Ziqing was even more pleased with herself. She looked at Yu Lily and coldly said, there's no use regretting it. I will never accept you. You misunderstood. I mean, I'm sorry that O Ming has a mother like you. The smugness in Xiao Ziqing's heart vanished without a trace as she snapped coldly. What do you mean by that? All right. O Ming interrupted them with a sullen face. He grabbed Yu Lily and said in a cold voice, anyway, my mother is an elder. Yu Lily, apologize to my mother. Apologize. Hearing that, Yu Lily pursed her lips and looked up at him. O Ming's pair of bright peach blossom eyes hid a deep and incomprehensible emotion. On one side was her mother, on the other side was her lover. How could she choose? Chapter 1098. Yu Lily suddenly found it funny. She chuckled and said, O Ming, I'm sorry. O Ming's heart sank when he heard that. At the same time, he saw that on her seemingly smiling face, there seemed to be an unconcealable sadness. In the depths of that smile, there was disappointment. O Ming's heart skipped a beat. He gave her a meaningful look and lowered his eyes. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to my mother. Apologize. Otherwise, what will happen in the future? Apologize. Otherwise, my mother will bear a grudge against me. He wouldn't marry someone else, and he wouldn't let me marry someone else. Xiao Ziqing had never been a magnanimous person. If he gave her a way out of this embarrassing situation, there might be room for redemption in the future. If things really became that bad, then what will happen in the future? But Yu Lily couldn't read his eyes. She vaguely felt that O Ming had something to say, but the grievance in her heart had already surpassed her reason. Yu Lily laughed and said, I'm sorry. I don't think I said anything wrong. Besides, Yu Lily. O Ming shouted and interrupted her. He put his hands on her shoulders and looked at her imploringly. Apologize. It's the new year. Don't make the elders unhappy, okay? Yu Lily could clearly see the emotions in O Ming's eyes. Her heart trembled. This guy. What does he mean? For my mother? What does that expression mean? Ming's back was facing Xiao Ziqing. That angle also happened to block Yu Lily's view. Yu Lily only heard Xiao Ziqing laugh coldly and say with some disdain, "Xiao, do you still expect her to apologize to me? If such a girl had intended to apologize to me, she wouldn't have said so many rude words just now. It's too late to make up for it now. It's too late to make up for it now. Yes, if I apologize, isn't it the same as making up for it? Moreover, this woman was so overbearing. Even if he apologized, she might not forgive him. She might even say a lot of nasty things. Just like, Ming. After all, they are mother and son. Their personalities and mouths were so similar." Yu Lily chuckled and took his hands away. She looked at Xiao Ziqing coldly and said, "As Mr. Wen said, everyone is equal. Your mother is an elder, but not an elder. I don't think I'm wrong. Enough." The middle-aged man's voice sounded a little hoarse. Wen Fenglin's voice was calm. He looked at Yu Lily and said, "Xiao Qiao, it's true that you were in the wrong today. But, young lady, your temper is too bad. No matter what, this is your boyfriend's mother. How could Yu Lily not know that?" When she heard Wen Fenglin's words, she found it strange. "Xiao Qiao, calm down. You've lived for decades, after all. Don't make such a fuss on New Year's Eve. Today is my art exhibition, and I thank all of you for your support. But, if word gets out about this, I, Wen Fenglin, won't be able to keep my face." Wen Fenglin's voice carried a hint of a smile as he spoke. His eyes, which had thick, double-lidded eyes, seemed to be filled with longing. Dimples appeared on both sides of his cheeks, and his smile was infectious. Although he had a smile on his face, he exuded an indescribable sense of dignity. He was peaceful, yet intimidating. Chapter 1099. Is this uncle just a wandering painter? His aura, as well as the aura and authority that he exuded when he spoke, made him look extraordinary. She had thought that the legendary painter was just an unkempt uncle. Unkempt, unshaven, reeking of alcohol, or hunched over, he looked like an ordinary person. But Wen Fenglin was completely different. As expected, the moment Wen Fenglin spoke, Xiao Ziqing shut her mouth and didn't say another word. Wen Fenglin smiled at Yu Lily and said, "Young people shouldn't be so hot-tempered. Go outside and get some fresh air. Xiao, aren't you going to take your girlfriend out?" "No way." Xiao Ziqing immediately shouted. She reached out and tugged at Ming. "Xiao, come back with me. It's New Year's Eve. What's the meaning of fooling around with an outsider? Go home now." Outsider. Fooling around. When Yu Lily heard those two words, she felt even more uncomfortable. Ming flung Xiao Ziqing's hand away and said, "Mom, you and Uncle Wen haven't seen each other in a long time. You two should catch up." As he spoke, he pulled Yu Lily out of the house. Xiao Ziqing was furious and shouted, "Xiao, where are you going now?" But Ming didn't reply. He just pulled Yu Lily out. Xiao Ziqing instinctively wanted to chase after them, but Wen Fenglin held her back. Wen Fenglin looked in the direction they had left and said, "Xiao Qiao, the children are all grown up. You shouldn't interfere so much. Let them sort it out themselves. You don't know the situation at all. That woman is very bad. She was an orphan from a young age. She didn't have parents. Not only is her upbringing lacking, but she's also very vicious. She was the one who exposed the incident with Shen Manting and Shin Luoen." "What incident?" Wen Fenglin frowned. Xiao Ziqing briefly explained the incident. When she was done, she said angrily, "That woman's motives are impure. She was in the capital for 4 years. Who knows how many people trampled on her in those 4 years? I won't let such a woman into our family. Absolutely not." Xiao Ziqing's tone was firm. Wen Fenglin could hear the seriousness in her words. Wen Fenglin furrowed his brows and said, "How could that be? That girl doesn't seem like that sort of person." "She's that kind of person." "Sigh, Fenglin, you haven't been in Kingstown for too long. You don't know that the girls here are different from the people you've interacted with." "I don't think so." As Wen Fenglin spoke, he seemed to recall something and asked, "Oh, right. You mentioned earlier that this lady is actually an orphan?" "Yes. But I seem to have heard you mention her mother several times just now. Did I hear wrong?" Xiao Ziqing froze for a moment before she scoffed coldly and said, I did it on purpose. I know she doesn't have a mother, so there's no one to discipline her, so. So, you purposely picked on her sore spot? When Fenglin was amused. He looked at Xiao Ziqing helplessly and said, You haven't changed at all. If Xian'er were still here, she'd definitely want to beat you up. Hearing the name Xian'er, Xiao Ziqing felt a little lonely. She said, Fenglin, I miss her so much. Chapter 1100. This was the worst New Year's Eve that Yu Lily had ever had. Yu Lily had never been so depressed on New Year's Eve in her 25 years of life. After being pulled out by Ming, the two of them went straight outside. There were a lot of people outside, and it was bustling. Yu Lily shivered as the cold air hit her. Ming held her in his arms and whispered, Are you cold? Yu Lily pushed him away with some resistance, lowered her head, and walked forward. Ming had already reached out to grab her, but Yu Lily's pace was a little fast, and there were a lot of people, so she was pushed away. Yu Lily! Ming shouted, but Yu Lily didn't look back, and walked through the crowd. Ming pushed through the crowd and chased after her. His eyes were fixed on Yu Lily's back, for fear of losing her. But Yu Lily's pace became faster and faster, and soon she was out on the road. She strode forward and squeezed into the queue for the subway. When Ming saw that, he became anxious and shouted, Yu Lily, stop! But there were too many people, and it was too noisy. Ming's shout was quickly drowned out by the crowd, and it didn't cause the slightest ripple. Ming followed her all the way to the line and watched her enter the subway station. She took out a subway card from nowhere and easily swiped it to enter the station. When Ming saw that, he was a little confused and shouted, Yu Lily! But Yu Lily was still indifferent, as if she didn't hear what he said. Watching Yu Lily get off the escalator, he sighed. He reached into his pocket, intending to take out his cell phone to call Yu Lily, but it was empty. Not only the phone, but even the black wallet that had been quietly lying in his pocket had disappeared without a trace at the same time. Looking at the bustling crowd in front of him, Ming sighed heavily. It was past 8 o'clock in the evening, the rush hour of the New Year's Eve. When the subway arrived, Yu Lily had no time to move, and she was squeezed onto the train by a bunch of people. At the next station, Yu Lily couldn't hear the announcement at all, and she was directly squeezed out of the train by the crowd. And she hadn't even arrived at the station. Yu Lily watched helplessly as the doors of the train closed and left. Her heart felt like it was being crushed by a rock. He opened his bag and took out his phone. However, not a single phone call. Not even a text message. Bastard. He didn't even make a phone call? Thinking of how he had asked her to apologize, Yu Lily felt a dull pain in her heart. 2 more buses passed by, but Yu Lily couldn't get on either. On the third trip, he finally went up. When he got home, it was already past 9 o'clock. A tall figure stood at the door. He was wearing a dark suit with dark patterns underneath a long black windbreaker. When he saw Yu Lily walking over, he straightened up and asked, Why are you back so late? Where did you go? When Yu Lily saw him, she didn't want to talk to him at all. She took out her keys and opened the door. Ming watched her open the door. Just as she was about to close the door, he blocked it with his hand and walked in. Yu Lily originally just wanted to throw a little tantrum. Seeing that she couldn't stop him, she simply ignored him and let him come in. She turned around and prepared to go back to her room. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.